Now we are on to the regular council meeting. Call to order, Madam Clerk.
Yes, one moment. Mayor Roscoe,
Present.
Councilmember Kaplan.
Here.
Councilmember London.
Here.
Councilmember McCormick.
Here.
Councilmember Moss.
Here.
Councilmember Sardinius.
Here.
And Councilmember Vasquez is not with us this evening.
Mr. Moss, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? All rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an invocation by Pastor Dennis Eastling with the Key Biscayne Community Church.
Good afternoon. Let us pray together. Gracious God, I've been asked to come and talk to you for this meeting. And we would be amiss not to invite you and your wisdom, your discernment. And I pray, Father, that you would do just that with these who are our leaders. I ask, God, that you would give them wisdom from on high. I pray, Father, that everything that is done would bring honor to you, as many important decisions are to be made by this group of people who are our leaders. We're instructed in your word to pray for our leaders. And so that's what we'll do tonight. We ask, God, your hand of blessing upon this meeting, this group of leaders, and all who are attending. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. If the council doesn't mind, we'd like to do the presentation to the De La Cruz family, since they're here and occupying all our seats. So we need to get with them right now. All right, so everyone come down to the podium while I read the presentation. So let me read the proclamation from the office of the mayor. Whereas the village of Key Biscayne recognizes the recent loss of one of its esteemed and accomplished longtime residents, Rosa de la Cruz, and whereas Rosa and her husband Carlos moved to Key Biscayne in the early 1970s and raised their family here in our island paradise. And whereas in 2009, Rosa and Carlos opened one of Miami's first private art museums, the De La Cruz Collection, a free museum, in order to share their extensive contemporary art collection with the world. And whereas Rosa and Carlos, with their commitment to contemporary art, generously shared their passion by also opening their art-filled home for numerous art exhibitions, events, and lunches on many occasions over many years. And whereas the De La Cruz art collection is considered one of the most important art collections in the world, and whereas Rosa, who was fiercely devoted to her causes, also advocated for young artists through scholarships for their education and travel, and whereas Rosa, who always involved herself through her volunteer work, served on the Village's Art in Public Places Advisory Board for over 20 years. And whereas while her family mourns the loss of their mother, grandmother, aunt, and wife, her commitment to inspire, educate, and improve the lives of lives of others lives on as her legacy. Rosa's dedication to art reminds one of artist Vincent van Gogh's famous quote, "I am seeking, I am striving, I am in it with all my heart." Now, therefore, I, Joe Rasco, Mayor of the Village of Key Biscayne, do hereby present this proclamation of recognition to the family of Rosa de la Cruz for her commitment and contributions to the art world and her devoted service to the residents of the village of Key Biscayne.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's a real tribute, I think, not just to Rosa, but as you said, fiercely devoted. She was a fiercely devoted woman, and she fought for the things that she believed in. This is really a tribute to those that speak out their mind, because it's very important in a democracy like ours. This is a family that started here many, many years ago. Actually, we started dating in '55. We moved here in '75, and it's been all our adult life, so to speak. It's half of our lives. And I want to thank everybody on the Key. I have deep admiration for those that run for office. I think you all know that. And I have deep admiration. I do. I think I really do. Thank you. And I have deep admiration for those that manage, that are administrators, and guard our safety, because that also is very necessary for a democracy. Yeah, I'm glad we have 6 great-grandchildren. 4 of them are here on the Key, and they're here. And we have 2 more up north, and 2 more on the way. So it's going to be a big family. This is the first Christmas that we had the entire family together in the last 2 or 3 years, because married couples have to take turns with the couple. And we had 40 people in total for dinner. So thank you again, Mr. Mayor, Council.
Okay, stand up so I can see you, yeah. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So the Art and Public Places Board actually met today and wanted to share something, just that the Board of Key Biscayne Art and Public Places deeply regrets the passing of our dear and irreplaceable Rosa Rionda de la Cruz. Her knowledge about and passion for the arts have enriched the village and beauty of Key Biscayne and beyond.
Thank you.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is brief comments by council.
Okay, seeing none, let's go to public comments.
Of the comments.
I guess they could all go talk now.
Okay, this first speaker, Debbie Weinenkoff.
Good evening. I'm Debbie Wanninghoff, 255 West Heather Drive. I've been a Key resident for over 33 years. And I'm here to tell you about the magic and the power of positive words. Words have wings. And this year, for the first time, we are having a poetry initiative on the Key. It's the 2024 Key Biscayne Poetry Share, and it's to encourage everyone to write a poem about their island home. I'd like to thank Anna Coles, who is the Assistant Director at the Community Center, and she is also the Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation. She also manages things at the Community Center. And I would like to thank members of my poetry committee who are here, who I didn't know would be here. Well, I knew Frank would be here, but I saw Michelle and Bill. They are on the poetry committee. So this poetry initiative is about bringing our community together. And I have some props. Can I show them to you? Yeah. My husband says I'm enthusiastic, but you know, some other people say that too. So we are bringing our community together. We are connecting our community through poetry with the 2024 Key Biscayne Poetry Share. We are using a special framework called a gem. Some people say they cannot write a poem, but I'm going to tell you that you can. This is our framework. It's called the gem. Oh, Joe, this is from the centenarian celebration on this side. Okay, the gem is 16 words, 7 lines, and it's shaped like a diamond. Here are 2 gems, one that I wrote and one that Roxy translated into Spanish. So we're trying to bring everybody together. We're going to have on April the 26th a sunset poetry share picnic in Paradise Park. And we invite you all to bring your blankets and chairs and picnic baskets. And there's going to be art, music, and you can read your gem. I'm almost done. So, there are 2 parts to this project. First is to write a gem. And then to come to the Sunset Poetry Share Picnic to read your gem and to be with your whole community to share a picnic dinner. So, any questions?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, now one more thing.
Oh, okay,
I would like to show you a gem.
you're on poetry overtime.
Okay, one more thing. So this gem was written by a sea turtle, and I'd like to read it. Key Biscayne sand leads me seaward. I will return someday to my home beach.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Isabel Custer is next speaker.
There's first.
Oh, now you want to dictate stuff. Okay, all right. Wait.
So we're the committee that you asked us to get together and present.
Okay, but the presentation's
They can do it now if you want to.
further in the agenda. No, let me get through the public comments. Okay. So Isabel, you want to talk now and okay, all right. Andy Herrera.
Andy Herrera, 250 Fernwood Road. I'm here tonight a little bit concerned. I'm working about a newsletter I received about the creation of a neighborhood watch program. The notice I received says the village of Key Biscayne will hold a meeting to discuss the formation of a neighborhood watch program that will led by residents working with village and police officials. Establish a self-governing organization. Self-governing means control of the state, community, or other body by its own members, a democratic government. The condition of being self-governed, self-control. To me, we are a community, we don't need this. We have enough, a good police officer, a good department, able to fulfill our community needs. They are able to do everything in their power to protect us as a community. And no one else can advocate for that. I got to hear 2 police reports in less than a month of crime committed against my person, my family, and I trust that they will catch the criminals. I trust them. So this is very simple. We don't need people, neighbors watching each other's. We don't need that. We know how to deal with bad behaviors. So to me, this is not a Cuban Comité de Defensa de la Revolución. This is not Venezuela de colectivos. This is not capos. We are in a civilized village. Everybody's well educated. We got knowledge enough to combat any kind of crimes. To me, this is not the best solution to a problem that we are facing, and we can handle it together. But the government involvement on this matter, I can accept that. That can be politically motivated against neighbors, against people in our village. That can be, that can lead to criminal activities, like we witnessed recently with the so-called, how you call this gentleman that took the law by his hands and committed a murder. So a vigilant. We don't need that in our community. We got the police. We provide them all the resources to fight crime. So to me, I'm against that, against the government involvement on this activity. If it's going to be created in our community, it has to be by these people, by our neighbors, but with no government involvement, because that can lead to something else. So I want you guys to know what I'm pointing out, because in previous meetings, our village manager stated properly that he wants to address volunteers to combat misinformation, to combat disinformation. Okay. This is wrong. This is a democracy. There's no misinformation. There's no disinformation. There are chats, okay? So I want you guys to be aware that our community is not happy with this notification that we receive from you guys. I'm not really happy with that, and we accept you guys involved in this.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker is Pablo Torres.
Good evening, Pablo Torres, 1111 Crandon Boulevard, apartment C602. I come before you as a resident here in Key Biscayne. I have continued concerns with this whole e-bike scooter situation. I understand that the temporary ban is coming up for renewal. My concern is, well, first and foremost, is the mayhem that comes with it. As many residents that come in and out of the Key, driving in, driving out, that becomes a big problem. Second of all, my other concern is lithium batteries. Lithium batteries, all it takes is one bad battery to cause a massive fire with an older building. A building like the towers, or Mar Azul, or any of the other buildings. I come before you to address that situation, and also older homes as well, older single-family homes. Unless the government has a clear and concise plan with regulating e-bikes, scooters, and batteries, I will tell you that I can't support your action plan. I would have to favor a ban unless there's a clear and concise plan. And also having some kind of e-bike scooter detail with the police department. The police department is limited on tools, and I would suggest you try to realign some resources towards that if you do consider regulating e-bikes and scooters as well. But you should really look into the lithium batteries when it comes to the condos as well. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Paulo. Michelle Esteves, you want to speak now or in the particular
No,
10,
I have
10 you said 10B?
Yeah, I have more than one. Sorry. Oops. You're dancing. Good evening again, Michelle Esteves, 425 Grapetree Drive, 204. I'm here to speak in favor, and I hope that the approval is unanimous in recognition of Ron Herbal service to this village. If that is approved, it's commendable. So again, I hope it's unanimously. To permit the monument signs, it is beneficial to the business district. So I hope that is well regulated and approved. And I already brought to your attention that you have to look into that part of the units of signs that will be permitted. 3, I have been here before you requesting to add crossing guards at the Key Colony intersection. Please, again, trying to implement it and not react it after a tragedy. It's chaotic, that corner in the mornings, that intersection. Thank you. You have no idea what it is to walk our street, our sidewalks without fear. It's beautiful. It's magnificent. I walk from my office this evening and I will walk back after the meeting. Last, to have a better use of this room as a multi-purpose room. It is a huge plus to our village. So I hope the proposition from Council Member London is approved this evening, and thank you, thank you, thank you. Don't vote against, okay? That is a mandate. Thank you.
I promise not to. If I do, I can't go home. Marisabel Herrera. Oh,
Sí.
Dale.
Figured you couldn't read my handwriting. Hi everyone, my name is Marisabel Herrera and I live in 161 Crandon Boulevard, apartment 122. I've been currently a resident of Key Biscayne for 14 years. However, I did live here in the early 80s when I was a child. So I've experienced the island's transformation in demographics, population, housing. I mean, I've seen this from like the 5 and 10 to what we have today, right? The recent tragedy that happened in the island resonates with me, and I empathize with both families that have been impacted. With that said, I do stand in support of a temporary ban for reflection. While acknowledging the need for a pause, I do oppose a permanent micromobility ban. I do advocate for a balanced solution, consider our evolving community and the community as a whole. A group of us residents have developed a proposal which emphasizes on regulations, education, and enforcement. I have shared this with some of you, Mayor Roscoe, the Chief of Police, and they shared it with you, our village manager. Moreover, we have engaged with organizations such as iBikeSafe.org from the University of Miami. Their expertise and willingness to work with us can contribute significantly to the establishment of educational programs, as well as safety initiatives and infrastructure. recommendations. So with this, I urge the council to consider an inclusive approach, fostering collaboration and thoughtful regulation to ensure the well-being and interest of an entire community, and not just one group of people. Thank you.
Thank you. Luis de la Cruz.
Luis de la Cruz, 640 Allendale Road. I just want to talk briefly about a couple of things, but the first thing I wanted to mention is my good friends here on the Film Festival Committee that I've participated in, and I just want to support that particular message. Ed London has an item coming up on that. I don't know when you're going to hear it, but hopefully they'll get a chance to each say what they've done. They've really done their homework. I can tell you that because I tested them. So 100% behind them on that particular initiative. So on this other, I'll go real brief because I have 4 items I want to talk about. The Rickenbacker Causeway Master Plan updates. I know you guys are really busy, but you really have to look at what your staff has put together as your presentation for Miami-Dade County. And you need to know that you're in favor of that, okay? It's absolutely essential because, you don't want to find out at the end, oh, wait, that's not what we wanted to propose, okay? Or yes, we're totally in favor of it. Do yourselves a favor. Spend some time looking at that, okay? I have. And I know that we had a lot of talk at one of the presentations that I'm not sure came down to that, to what was proposed and put before Miami-Dade County. So that's one thing. Then we go to the motorized motorcycles is what they are. They're electric motorcycles. They're, whatever, doesn't matter what the state of Florida wants to call them. They're not bicycles, they're electric motorcycles. My car is an electric car. It's still a car. Electric motorcycle is a motorcycle just like in any other. So whatever you guys do, the closest that you can get to those electric motorcycles having the same restrictions and the same rights as a regular motorcycle is the way that we should do it, okay? So, I know that, your council has interpreted the state statute in a certain way that sort of ties your hands. Try to get to what I just said, because that's a fairest thing. I don't believe in bans of things that other people are entitled to use. So that's that. On the neighborhood watch, I think we need to take a step back and pinch ourselves because we live in the safest community in the state of Florida, probably one of the safest ones in the United States, if not the world. So pinch yourselves on that, okay? Be careful with all this, neighborhood watch and all of a sudden, I don't want a surveillance type community where all of a sudden, our neighbors are looking to see whether the neighbor has built his hedge 2 inches higher than it should, and I'm going to call the building department to turn them in. That's not what this community is about, okay? Neighborhood watch, what are they going to watch? They're going to watch the paint dry? Sincerely, what are our worst things that we have here? Vehicle theft, like happened to me, because I'm stupid and I left my fob by mistake in my car. If we stop leaving our fobs in our cars, then we get rid of the biggest problem we have in the village of Key Biscayne. So please keep everything in perspective, okay? So that was it.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Álvaro Córdoba.
Thank you very much, and good evening to all, Mayor and Council. I want to start by sending my condolences and my love.
Excuse me, sir, your name and address.
I'm sorry. Álvaro Córdoba, 1121 Crandon. D902.
Thank you.
I wanted to start by sending my condolences and my love and support to the two families involved in the accident a couple of weeks ago. I'm here representing myself, and I know many parents, adults, and young adults. Council, electric mobility is the urban reality. It's here to stay. It is a reality. The banning train of thought cannot be a mechanism. Cannot be a mechanism. If that's the mechanism, so let's immediately ban cars, golf cars, bicycles, and we can keep on going down the train. Ban people, right? As people, we commit a lot of bad things. Proper and actionable regulation is the only solution. And keeping in mind, and as the gentleman was saying, there's people that actually use them and need them and are at age of usage. I understand there needs to be a freeze, a stop when something like this happens. But with the proper enforcement, we can be in the right place. And I think this is something that can stop some of the, I hate using bipartisan or splitting this beautiful town that I feel privileged to call home and to come every day and my kids going to school. Last but not least, I want to thank the police department that is here. And I want to ask for two big things. If you want to hear a place where we're going to have more potential dead people, we need to stop the drag racing towards the end of the island that is happening every single night. We need to stop that, please. They've been doing a fantastic job, but these kids are fantastically in doing it, not fantastic in what they do. I'm sorry. And last but not least is this bipartisan that I mentioned, sparks some tension. And the kids are getting abused here and there today on the streets by the so-called no-ban individuals. And it's not a matter of chats or sending videos, but kids are being abused and being screamed and are being called a whole bunch of names, right? From killers to, you guys are the committers, or you got to do. And we need to keep an eye on that. We need to keep the cool. We need to understand both sides, but more importantly, we're a community that we need to thrive together. And that's the two asks I ask for the police, because you can help us with that. The second one I think is for all of us, but the first one is definitely with the police helping us with that drag. Thank you again and have a great day.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's, I have one more here. Chiara? It's part of the group, okay. All right, so let me put all these together.
Mayor, if there's anybody who wants to speak that may not know to write, do you want to just offer that? 'Cause I'm not sure if there's some people who came from the youth council. I don't know if you guys knew you had to write. Okay.
Okay. Can you guys take the podium and talk about it as a group, and that way we can, hopefully you don't repeat yourselves.
It's going to be very brief.
Okay, and if you can act for the spokesperson of it, that would be great.
Good evening, everybody. Claire London, 736 Woodcrest Road. I'm here tonight to introduce the committee members of the group formed at the mayor's request for the conversion of the council chambers to a multi-purpose space. I ask that I introduce them. I'll let them say what they need to say, and if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to do closing, not arguments, closing remarks. Thank you. Is that okay?
Yeah, but let's move it along.
Okay. We're asking for your support tonight and approval of a request for not to exceed $197,000 for the conversion of the council chambers to a multi-purpose space. Each of us will present a different aspect of the project that is pertinent to the conversion. Our group includes Isabel Custer, founder of the Key Biscayne Film Festival, Pablo Sanchez, the technical director of the film festival, Ed Stone, founder of the Arts Club, who can't be here tonight, Mary Tague, Film Festival committee member and a supporter of the youth program,
Toby Aurora is an advocate for the cultural arts and a film aficionado. Katie Petrus, who's not here tonight, is an advocate for the cultural enrichment of the island. And Luis de la Cruz, you just heard.
Good evening. My name is Mary Tague, 610 North Masha Drive. Thank you for letting me speak on behalf of the Key Biscayne Council Chamber conversion to a theater. With the birth and success of our first Key Biscayne Film Festival, we are now requesting the possibility of using the council chambers for a movie theater in a multi-purpose room. The quarters could be repurposed during non-meeting times, maximizing the use of the space when council meetings are not taking place. Movies are now shown in the Lighthouse Room in the Community Center for use in the Ask Club. We also use the Lighthouse Room for our film festival on Saturday. It worked out all right for our first one, but we feel we could have done much better. The acoustics in the screen could have been sharper quality, but most importantly, the noise coming from the outside lobby was bothersome, irritating, while trying to watch a movie or listen to the panels. The Lighthouse Room in the second floor lobby are very busy with kids in other various classes and activities and does not allow for our programming, as we would like to run movies Wednesday through Saturday evenings and Saturday and Sunday matinees. We anticipate filling a huge void in our community by bringing movies tailored to our teen population on a weekly basis in a safe and supervised environment. Supervised environment to watch, hang out, and socialize. We also will be providing appropriate movies to our unique abilities population, and It Takes a Village also on a weekly basis. I noticed at our film festival weekend that it was not just about the movies and the panels, it was about the coming together of friends. We envision this facility to be a great venue to serve a cultural need for residents of all ages to come together, socialize, and enjoy shared experiences, and to build a sense of community. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening. Isabel Custer, 100 Ocean Lane Drive, apartment 304. When we started the Key Biscayne Film Festival project about a year ago, Maite Garrido Thornton and I were giddy with excitement that we could have something culturally stimulating on the island that would also make use of the incredible green spaces, that would make use of the community center, that would bring together people of all ages for the cinematic arts. Our three pillars were and are to serve the community primarily, to support the arts, obviously, because filmmakers need festivals, artists need to find their audience, and finally, to create awareness about the environment by focusing on that subject matter. I think that one of the reasons why we were also so motivated to create an in-person festival was due to one of the many things that we learned during COVID, which is the value of a shared experience. We all think of this multi-purpose room or cinema chamber as an important cultural meeting point for the island. And we hope that it may satisfy a craving for consistent cultural programming and community gathering. As the Key Biscayne Film Festival programmer, I would like to offer to also help coordinate the programming of this space by focusing on the widest variety of our demographic that we have, programming classic films for those who enjoy classic films, documentaries, teen movies, and what we call special needs is AMC has actually this kind of screenings. They're called sensory. Chiara Bergonzi from It Takes a Village can tell you more about it because she's attended them. And we can also adapt this space for those kinds of screenings. So I think it'll be something that everyone will enjoy, will keep kids off the streets, and will also allow us to do the kinds of enriching things that we did in the film festival, like Q&A and panels, and have artists meet with audience members. Thank you.
Thank you.
How you doing, esteemed members of the council? Pablo Sanchez, 165 Hampton Lane. I'll keep it short. I think from a technical perspective, this is a unique space that we have here in the village. It's like no other room that we have, and I think it allows to create through the use of all the technical tools that we have within the film festival and the leadership within the village to create a space that really is an important place to have a cultural hub for our citizens of the village of Key Biscayne. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Toby Rohr, 791 Crandon Boulevard, 1405. I want to start by thanking you for your service to the community and to the village. I have two quotes. The first one is, "Perhaps he knew, as I did not, that the earth was made round, so we will not see too far down the road." That was said by Karen, who was played by Meryl Streep. The second quote is, "I like animals. Nothing they do is half-hearted. Everything they do it for the first time. They hunt, they eat meat, they mate." That was said by Dennis. Dennis was played by Robert Redford. Those quotes come from my absolute favorite film, Out of Africa. Out of Africa won the Best Picture in 1985. I have seen this film dozens of times. It always transports me to a place that I have yet to visit. Movies can touch us on a personal, communal, and global level. We all have been to the movies where the scene has made us gasp. The audience has gasped at something in the screen. Movies can teach. They can open our eyes to faraway lands and issues close to home. Movies enhance our dreams. They allow us to see ourselves in others, or perhaps not. There is a physical and emotional connection to see a film. Since the pandemic, most of us have been at first forced to, and secondly, we got into the habit of seeing movies at home, but we're missing the big picture, the shared experience of going to the movies. At this time, I asked the council to consider allowing to make this chamber to have a dual purpose. It will enhance the cultural, social, and community life of Key Biscayne. I am excited to think of once again going to the theater, being able to see documentaries or foreign films or whatever is playing, and not having the hassle of dealing with traffic. Imagine for a minute, dinner and a movie with friends. Wouldn't that be great to do that? The committee has been careful in taking into consideration all of the moving parts to make this happen. Now we ask you to approve this request. I thank you for your time and I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Say yes, God.
Good afternoon. My name is Julian Tomasino. I live at 736 Woodford Road.
I'm Maria Cortez, and I live in 797 Ridgewood Road.
And my name is Gabriela Cotto. I live at 635 Harbor Drive. So we are here on behalf of the Key Biscayne Youth Council, acting as a proponent to Council Member London's proposal of utilizing the Village Council chambers as a multi-purpose room, specifically as a movie theater on Friday nights.
This would cater to the teenage population of Key Biscayne and act as a way for us teenagers to take advantage of the facilities this island has to offer.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Kiara Bergonzi, 798 Crandon Boulevard, apartment number 8. I'm here to thank you all because I know that representations matter. Thank you for the Key Biscayne Film Festival that we did here. to be very inclusive, and we include like 7 kids from It Takes a Village with disabilities, and they were amazing, and they were super proud of their movies, and they invite all of their parents and friends. We don't often see that inclusion, but we are very happy, and I want to support this group to make Key Biscayne Film Theater. I went to many places that they have sensory rooms in their theater because they just dim the lights. It's nothing complicated, but it's to adapt to their needs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We have met with Jeremy, Todd, Eric, Marcos, the fire marshal, to take into consideration fire codes, regulations, and necessary changes to make this space work. The budget that Jeremy has presented is $197,000. Within this number, we can provide a perfect, comfortable space for movies and other events. The need for a designated space with no sound intrusion or scheduling conflicts has shown up time and time again. This space will provide something for the whole community. I think I don't have to go into that, we just heard it. We're very excited about providing something for the Teen Council, It Takes a Village, and the Arts Club is over the moon. I know you all had a quote. You all had a text from Ed Stone. I'd like to quickly quote and read it. And it's, "Dear council members, thank you for all you do. Tonight it's very important that you know that the Arts Club supports the entire concept of utilizing the council chambers for a multi-purpose space. We were the original proposers 10+ years ago. Unfortunately, I can't attend in person, but wanted you to know the active seniors on the quay can hardly wait. Thank you for your consideration, Ed Stone." Finally, everyone that came to the opening night of the film festival Under the Stars loved the occasion. We did too. It was amazing, but I'd just like you to know that cost $20,000 to set up. So imagine 8 movies, 9 movies, you paid for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, one more speaker, Victoria Jackson.
Eddie Alfonso can only be 7:30. He has to go to another meeting.
What do you want me to do?
Good evening, Victoria Jackson, 786 Fernwood Road. I am here to speak on behalf of my late husband, Ron Herbal. As you know, Ron was a man who lived here on Key Biscayne. He was dedicated to the village and his duty as a firefighter and also a paramedic over 40 years. So many of Key Biscayners have told me how Ron saved their loved ones' lives or helped out in many ways. Ron was part of a special task force that went up to the World Trade Center on that horrific day when the towers came down. He was under the watch of Key Biscayne at that time. Unfortunately, Ron ended up with many different cancers and from being up at the Twin Towers. I do believe that my late husband was a true hero. He was proud to be part of the Key Biscayne firefighter family. Along with his fellow brothers and sisters, he selflessly dedicated his time and efforts to the community and other communities. I am proud to say that Ron has been recognized by the state of Florida. He's been recognized by our country for his service. He's even been acknowledged internationally by having his name put on the Fallen Firefighter Memorial Wall in Colorado Springs. I am now asking the village at this time, as you all know, we're talking about it, to honor the death benefits that I believe that my husband are entitled to. And I do want to acknowledge his death as a line of duty death. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay, with that, we close public comments.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is the agenda. Approval, deferrals, additions, deletions, substitutions, withdrawals.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to push 11A4, zoning in progress, to April.
Okay. Any objection?
Only a commitment to try to make that a meaningful meeting.
We will.
It was 11. Remember?
11A4, zoning in progress.
Okay. Any other changes? See no other changes. All those in favor of the agenda as is, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed, motion carries. The next item is a presentation of a proclamation for Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month.
Okay, instead of reading it, since we have so much more to cover, this presentation is for colorectal cancer, which is the second deadliest cancer in the United States and affects both men and women equally. So we're just recognizing that here tonight.
The next item is the Rickenbacker Causeway Master Plan updates given by Miami-Dade County Department of Transportation and Public Works.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you very much for your time. My name is Paola Vaz. I'm the Chief of Multimodal Development for Department of Transportation and Public Works. And we're here to tell you a little bit of our wonderful project on the Rickenbacker Causeway. We're working on a master plan to see the vision of the causeway for the next 20 years. We're working on projects that are low-hanging fruit, mid-term and long-term proposals. This is a truly multimodal corridor, and therefore it's also an evacuation route and a priority for Mayor Cava and Commissioner Regalado. So because of that and all the changes that are coming to the causeway, like the La Virginia Key Master Plan, there's also a master plan for the Commodore Trail. We completed the underline. So we're trying to really build a truly multimodal network of transportation in Miami-Dade County. We're also working on the Miami-Dade County Transportation Master Plan, which is the general plan for the next 20 years. And we want to have these projects from the master plan for Rickenbacker to be included in this bigger master plan. We were also are moving from road impact fees into mobility impact fees. The road impact fees used to have a bucket of money only for roadway improvements. Now we have moved into the mobility impact fee, which will include a bucket of money specifically for transit, pedestrian, and bicycle. So we're trying to plan the proper project to have our priorities set. So when we're ready to program these projects, we can analyze the projects that are coming out of the master plan. Our team has been working for about 6 months already. I've had multiple meetings with our project advisory team. Our project advisory team includes Jeremy from Village of Key Biscayne. We also have members from City of Miami, advocacy groups, the Department of Transportation, Florida Department of Transportation, the state, the TPO. So a lot of representatives there. So all of our findings and all of our solutions are being encompassed with this technical advisory committee team. And with that, I'm gonna let Stuart Robertson is here with me. He's the project manager for the consultant team. He's gonna give you a little presentation of what we've done so far.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Stuart Robertson with Kimley Horn and Associates. We're the engineering and planning consultancy that DTPW has contracted with to support them on the development of the Rickenbacker Causeway Master Plan. Thank you for your time. I have a brief presentation to kind of bring you up to speed on where we are now within the Causeway Master Plan. The purpose is to provide a holistic planning framework for the causeway. We have lots of different purposes of the causeway, and we want to take all of those into account. As I'm sure you are keenly aware, it's the only land-based access to the village of Key Biscayne. It also provides opportunities for world-class water sports. It's the most popular biking and running route anywhere in Miami-Dade County. And also at the northern end of the causeway, it connects to the Commodore Trail and the Underline. That is a nexus of three of the most important trails in Miami-Dade County's Greenways network, and we want to make the Rickenbacker Trail a wonderful entrance to those other trails, as well as just promoting the connectivity around the county. So our study area does go all the way from I-95 in the north, which is also the intersection with the Underline just past I-95 on Southwest First Avenue, all the way to the village of Key Biscayne boundary, so at the south end of Crandon Park. There is a lot going on the corridor. We have a portion that is part of the state highway system. The Southeast 26th Road is part of the Florida Department of Transportation, or FDOT's network. We have the toll gantry area onto the causeway, the Hobie Island section, the William Powell Bridge, the Virginia Key section, the Bearcut Bridge, and then on into Crandon Park. So a lot of different sections that we are studying, each one within its own context. We have conducted a series of public engagement events. They are still ongoing. We started in December. We're doing pop-up events, pop-up tents at various community events around the area, including the Marche de Noël in December, many other events as well. We're going to be continuing these on through the end of the spring, so look for opportunities to come out and participate. We do have an online survey with a QR code that we distribute at all of these events. We also have a map that people can go on and actually provide place-based comments of what they would like to see as part of the master plan. And Paola mentioned the study advisory committee on which your staff is participating. We've conducted various stakeholder interviews in addition to our advisory committee with all of the agencies and the advocacy groups that you see here. And here's a list of the concepts that we have developed based on this public input, as well as the goals that the county has for the master plan. Safety is going to be the first word in the master plan. So a safety first transportation approach to the development of the projects. And this means safety for all users, people in cars, people walking, people on bicycles, safety for all users. We also want to provide a continuous separated bicycle facility to really upgrade the Rickenbacker Trail into a modern design for people using that as a bicycling facility. I mentioned creating the proper trail connections to the Commodore Trail and the Underline, the area that we're calling the Nexus on the mainland. Looking for opportunities to provide additional safe pedestrian crossings along the causeway. We're also going to be looking at eliminating free flow right turn lanes at signalized intersections. And this is part of the attempt to improve the safety of those intersections. Improving traffic circulation on Virginia Key. This is in a particular importance for helping to manage special event traffic that's happening on Virginia Key. Improving the trip reliability for through traffic. This means having a more consistent travel time to go from point A to point B along the causeway. And then finally, incorporating resiliency into the project. We're working very closely with Miami-Dade County Regulatory and Environmental Resources Department. They have a special resiliency team. We are modeling scenarios related to flooding, storm surge, and king tide flooding as well, in order to incorporate those resiliency aspects into our recommendations, and also to make sure that there's enough stormwater storage capacity to hold the additional stormwater and the flooding that is expected to occur based on the type of projects that we are recommending. So that is our update. We would be happy to address any comments or questions that you may have, and we provided our contact information on this slide as well.
Okay, thank you very much for giving us this information.
Are you going to do a pop-up on Key Biscayne soon?
Yes.
Yes, so actually, the village has been kind enough to put our information and the QR code and share our survey through the newsletter.
Right.
And definitely we have our public involvement team that is doing the calendar. They're looking for all the events that are happening within the area of the causeway and in Key Biscayne, and trying to get, so if you know of any events that you would like us to participate, we hear wonderful things about the picnic. We can have a table there and we can share some information for the poet. So any events that you would like us to be there, we'll be happy to assist.
Okay, great, great. And you're still in the early planning stages, so everyone can make their comments and give suggestions.
Correct.
At this time.
Correct. And a wonderful way to contribute is by using that interactive map that we have the QR code. I'm sorry, we should have put the QR code here, but it's in the newsletter, and it's on the flyer in the newsletter. It's very important because you can actually drop your information in the exact location with countermeasures and propose improvements. We look at all these things when we're developing our projects because you guys are the ones that live here. We don't. And there may be a lot of near misses that we don't realize. This is a Vision Zero location, so it's of utmost important for us to really capture what you're going through every day. We're traveling this network that we may be missing that the data doesn't tell us.
Right. Well, I hope the data tells us that we're not very happy on Saturdays and Sundays around here. So take that into consideration.
It's a huge event every weekend.
Thank you.
And once you guys come up with a preliminary plan, are we going to be able to have that input and make any adjustments if need be at that time? Okay, excellent.
Working together with your staff, but also we plan to come back to you as a council when the master plan gets further progressed as well.
Exactly, with some of the proposed solutions and
Excellent.
the main projects.
And Jeremy reminded that we have been to two pop-up events so far on the Key, the Christmas market and a basketball game. And we're looking for further events as the public engagement continues throughout the spring into the summer.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out.
Just say one thing.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is a presentation on lithium battery, EVs, electric bikes, motorized scooters, household devices, safety, and condominiums.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about fires, and I know it's come up a little bit tonight. Mr. Torres mentioned it, and a number of other people in the community have talked to us about some of the concerns about lithium-ion batteries. I don't think fires are anything new in Key Biscayne or in the country. I think we go back to the 1700s, and Benjamin Franklin was one of our first firefighters. This picture, if you can see it, is not a good sight. We don't like seeing smoke on the horizon, especially in and around our island, or anywhere for that matter. But definitely on Key Biscayne, that's not a comforting sign. And if you're seeing smoke from the bridge, I'm probably getting phone calls, and our staff's probably rolling out the door. We see a number of different fires on Key Biscayne. We get a lot of outdoor fires. These photographs are from the island. Golf cart fires are often caused by batteries. Vehicle fires are outside fires, and typically they pose little risk to life safety, assuming that the occupants get out of the way, they create some traffic. However, today we're fighting fires a lot differently than we were 5 or even 10 years ago. An electric vehicle fire requires a lot more people, a lot more water, and a lot more time. If it's outside, I'm pretty happy, to be perfectly honest. We'll get the people there, we'll get the water on it, and we'll put the fire out. But at least in the picture on the right, that golf cart was pretty close to a single-family house. So fires in buildings are a little different, right? We'll put about 20 to 30 people on a structure fire, as we like to call it. If you're in a single-family home, it's a lot different than if you're in a high-rise. There are fire protection features in a high-rise. I've heard a couple of the buildings were mentioned earlier, And all the buildings you're looking at have fire alarms. Most of them have fire sprinklers, maybe whether it's partial or full. However, there's something unique about living in a high-rise in a vertical community, if you will, is you have a responsibility not just to your family, but to every other person that lives in that building and every other person that visits that building. And so, you know, kitchen fires are pretty common. And now today, we definitely have concerns of what you're going to hear more from the fire marshal about lithium-ion batteries. This, again, isn't a pretty sight. This picture on the right is an electric, it's an electric scooter. It was a fire that we had at 180 Harbor Drive, 180 Crandon Boulevard, which is the Galleria. And this is a commercial occupancy. This was a lithium-ion battery that caught fire. And I have a video that I would be happy to share with you if you're interested. And it shows the soot and the effects of that space from what one small lithium-ion battery did. And this was one of those larger scooters with the big handles and the wide tires, a little bit different than what you're seeing today, but the early scooters. And this pretty much destroyed a good portion of that. And that black that you see on the floor, that's everywhere. That's on the walls, that's on the ceilings. And there was nobody injured. And they realized that the next morning, and this fire basically put itself out. However, if this was in a high rise and it would have looked something like this, it would have been a much different situation and it would have created a significant risk to life safety. And so the other thing that I want to just point out is that we're a coastal community. And traditionally we have winds out of the east. Sometimes they're stronger than not, and they have an effect on fires. There's drafts in buildings, and our fire prevention has done a tremendous job. We just had 5 assessors come in and look at our department, and we spoke about that earlier today with the police chief, that both of our departments are now accredited, and these assessors pointed out the amount of real estate that we protect, and over a 5-year period between 2018 and 2022, that we had less than $500,000 in fire loss. So over a 5-year period, less than $500,000, 0 deaths, and only 1 injury that was not related to cooking. So I'm very proud of the work that we've done in fire prevention. I'm proud of the protection that we create, and I'm going to be. We started talking about risk reduction in fire prevention. Chief Osorio's office is now leading up the risk reduction efforts of the fire department, and we're working with buildings, and you're going to hear a little bit about what buildings can do to make a difference in protecting themselves when it comes to lithium-ion batteries, electric vehicles, e-bikes, e-scooters. No matter what the outcome of what occurs in the community, this is still a risk. I carry 2 lithium-ion batteries in my pocket here. And we're going to try to work with these buildings to help mitigate this risk, to hopefully allow for insurance premiums to hopefully be maintained or go down, because there is an effect on insurance due to lithium-ion batteries. So Chief Osorio is going to come up and just go a little bit deeper into this quickly. And I want to point out that he has been assigned by the State Fire Marshal's Office to be as part of a task force for lithium-ion batteries. He's done a lot of work with electric vehicles. I'm proud that I can ask him to come up here and share a little bit of his knowledge with you. Chief Osorio.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Thank you for having me. I'll go right into it. So what we know about lithium-ion batteries, it's every day we use them, right? They're in our cell phones, laptops, everything we have. We have e-scooters, we have e-bikes now, and now electric vehicles as well. And there's a thing called ESS, which is an energy storage systems. We use it now for, actually the houses have solar panels on top that charge these lithium-ion batteries inside the garages. So that's used for emergency batteries, it's used for backup, and it's also used for daily use. So what's the good thing about these? Why the lithium-ion batteries are used so much? Because of the size. They store a lot of energy in a small size. But what's the hazards and what's the problems with them? They can come defective, they can come damaged. They're not certified by UL. They're not certified by CE, which is a certified electric engineering company. They're not they can overcharge and they can overheat. The problem with overcharging is if you don't use the manufacturer's recommendations, which we strongly recommend you always read that little pamphlet that it comes with to say, this is the information we're giving you. Once it's charged, take it off. Don't leave it charging just thinking it's going to keep charging and it's the best thing to do. The dangers of these things, there's a thing called thermal runaway. So how these batteries run is they have multiple cells and multiple banks. And what happens is once one of these banks get crystallized and they heat up, they will catch fire, causing a chain reaction, immediate chain reaction called thermal runaway. Once that happens, there's literally an explosion. But before that happens, there's off-gassing. So you'll have an odor sometimes. You'll see them deform. They create some type of warning situation for you to realize that this battery's going bad. A lot of your cell phones have it. A lot of your cell phones you see when you're charging it, and you've all touched it and it's hot. You're like, wow, this battery's charging. It's really hot. What happens is that lithium ion, it's actually crystallizing, and therefore your battery starts deteriorating inside of it. Once it crystallizes, it's no longer holding that charge. So once there's a thermal runaway and once there's a fire, these fires get very hot. They're very explosive and they're very hard to extinguish. To extinguish an electric vehicle fire, it takes over 5,000 gallons of water. Just to give you an example, our fire trucks hold 500 to 750 gallons. So imagine the volume of that. Why is that important? Well, if you're storing these e-bikes inside your apartment, what's going to potentially try to extinguish that fire? Well, if it's in a condo, in your high-rise, for example, the towers of Key Biscayne is partially sprinklered. We encourage, obviously, to fully sprinkle your apartment, okay? What happens is that'll help you contain that fire within that unit and allowing everyone else to get out. But where you put that e-bike makes a significant impact on your household, whether it's a single-family home or it's an apartment. But if it's an apartment, it affects an entire community, which is that entire building. What are some warning signs? We know it off gases. It'll smell. It might not even just smell like an ammonia type of smell. It'll change color. It'll provide some heat, like we talked about, like your cell phones. It changes shape. It deforms. It actually will bubble up. If you ever had a battery, you've seen it deform. It gets larger, and some of them will leak, or the charger will create just a humming noise. And you know that's the time to just eliminate everything, just get rid of all of it. What's the important part of disposing it? We've talked about this before, is when you get rid of these batteries, try to find a recycling place or location that will take the lithium ion batteries. Do not, and I repeat, do not throw them down the trash chute, especially in a high rise, because if you throw them down the trash chute and that battery is defective or something happens, imagine if that catches fire, it's in a large container, and now you have a trash fire, and the fire department gets there, we're trying to chase this smoke and this fire of a large containment. So here are 5 things that we can do as a community and as a condos and as in general as the village. Where are we storing these e-bikes? Are we storing them right at the front door, which is your main exit at your front door of your apartment? Think about that. Where are we parking the EVs? Are we looking at parking the EVs if they're under the parking garage outside the exterior? So if there is a fire, there is some type of way for the fire department to get into that parking garage exteriorly to extinguish that fire, and therefore it's not trapped inside the middle and creating a larger fire inside and underneath the structure and potentially impacting that structure and weakening that structure. Are we storing multiple e-bikes and e-scooters in a storage room? If so, how large and how many can we store in there? New York is encountering that they have regulations as far as how many they're going to be storing inside a room, whether it's a 2-hour or 4-hour rated room. They say there's only more than 5 or 6 bikes. Why? Because think about it. Now you're potentially putting 15, 20 of these e-bikes and e-scooters together in one room. Think about the catastrophic event of something like that happening. And then the biggest control that I tell the condominiums is you have bylaws. You have condo docs, you have bylaws, you can control and regulate immediately what you want to do as a condo board, and control and regulate what you want to do in the sense of saying you're not allowed to have e-bikes in your apartments. We're going to create a storage area. This is the location. You have that immediate effect as a condo board. And we encourage the condos to do that because right now NFPA, which is what I enforce, does not have a specific regulation to say you can and cannot do certain things.
Okay.
And then early warning devices, there's thermal imaging cameras that they're using now for fire alarm systems. There's all sorts of gas detectors that they're using. So technology's trying to catch up to what's already out there. And it's always a reactionary thing, right? That's why before it was LP gas, LP vehicles, and then that didn't go anywhere, and now they're EV vehicles. So the biggest thing I can drive home is make sure we're aware of our lithium-ion batteries, what we're doing with them, and how we're maintaining them, and no, they do have, like everything else, a life expectancy. So with that, any questions?
Okay. Yeah. So, Mr. Manager, and you guys met recently with the Condo Managers Association, right?
I did, yes.
Yeah. So let's make sure that we get this to all the condos, and then I guess you guys need to establish a task force and come back to us and say, look, we've determined that these are the best practices that ought to, and if I don't know, Chad, I don't know, we need to codify anything, but certainly let's get going on this right away so that we can have a game plan going in here.
Absolutely. I know the state's working very hard in trying to track these fires, lithium-ion battery fires, as well as working on trying to prevent, and even technologies trying to move towards a different type of lithium-ion battery system.
Right.
And Mr. Mayor, when I had that meeting with the President's Council for the condominiums, not only were they concerned and wanted the fire department to come out and give these presentations, they've also begun to get notifications from their insurance companies beginning to question how many EV stations do you have, how many e-bikes do you have, et cetera. So I think even the insurance companies are starting to see the liability of lithium batteries.
Okay. Mr. London?
Marcos, everything I read, usually the fires start when people, as you said, are charging or overcharging the batteries, especially with the cars. I mean, an e-bike is a small battery compared to an electric car. Would it make sense that we would not, I don't know if we have the right to do that, but you guys have all kinds of life safety stuff, that we prohibit charging within the building, and the charging is done outside the building. And by doing that, you probably eliminate, if you look at the number of fires that happen by charging, not charging, probably the majority of the fires, won't you?
Conceptually, yes. But how you regulate that is again, it's the hard part. And then it's where if a condominium says you're not allowed to bring in your e-scooter inside your place, but you designate an area specifically for that, I think it's a compromise. It's
I'm talking about, again, the charging of the cars, especially more so than the bikes, the large charging, the chance of a massive fire because an electric vehicle explodes.
Correct.
So, but moving the charges outside the building, I would think would be a major step forward to eliminating the problems of having charged inside and causing structural damage. Very few little bikes are going to cause major structural damage, but a car would cause, could cause a collapse.
Correct. And that's why we encourage, and that when we review these permits, or when they do permits for charging or charging stations for these electrical vehicles, we encourage them to do it on the perimeter, somewhere where the fire department can access that just in case.
But I'm saying, can we, as a village, say no charging stations inside a multifamily building? Or we don't have the right to do that?
You really don't have the right to do that, because where are you hanging your code and what are you referencing unless you create an ordinance for that?
Okay. Chad?
Well, we are committed, though, council member, to come back with best practices. So there's a lot of research out there that's starting to come about. I've asked the chief and the deputy chief to begin to do that research. My concern, obviously, and so is the condo associations, once the insurance companies start getting involved, obviously there's going to be much more issues about this.
But do we have the right, Chad, to do that or not?
I'll look into whether we've been preempted or not.
Thank you.
I also know, and Steve and I were talking, and I just sent it over to Eric, there was a bill passed this session to deal with lithium-ion charging and giving the fire marshal more authority to adopt some type of uniform standards. So I'm sure that's going to be coming forward
Okay.
too.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on.
Joe, could I ask a question?
Yes, Alice.
Steve or Benjamin, maybe you could answer this. Have we seen any impact on our insurance with offering those Blink chargers around? I know the village has been really committed to trying to, promote e-mobility and things in the sense of putting those charging stations out. Is there any chance that we're opening ourselves up to increased insurance premiums or liabilities of any sort?
At this time, no, we are not. And obviously, we only have a few of them, and so we actually have them outdoors. So it's, right now, that's best practice. But no, we have not heard anything from our insurance company.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is the consent agenda.
Move. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is the first reading of an ordinance of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, amending Chapter 30 Zoning and Land Development Regulations of the Village Code of Ordinances by amending Section 30-191 Prohibited Signs and Section 30-195 Non-Residential District Signs to permit monument signs in the C1 Low Intensity Commercial District and the Institutional District, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date.
Somebody need to move the ordinance? Mr. London?
Moved.
Moved. We have a
I'd rather send this back and
I'll second it. We need to have a conversation here. Okay, what's the will of the board here?
go back to the drawing board.
Isn't Jeremy going to make a presentation?
Yes, we can do that. You really are gung ho here now, okay?
I think this entire thing is mistaken.
Okay.
The rationale that's presented, I think, is just completely wrong.
Okay.
I just think that we actually had this in-depth discussion. I don't know when it was, maybe 4 years ago. Were you up here, Frank?
Yeah.
At the time? And I know that this came about. I remember Theo coming in with one of the signs in the back and holding it up, and we had an in-depth discussion. And where we landed was there can be monument signs for commercial and multifamily properties only to give the address and the name of the building, and that was it. There was nothing further than that. And my understanding is that, at least previously, that the Key Biscayne does not want to look like a Las Vegas when you start to see all these signs going down the road, because every business wants it, and I understand that they want it, but at the end of the day, it's the people that live here and what we want to see and how we want Crandon to look, and I think that's important.
Okay, let's have the presentation.
So I'll be brief. Jeremy Karras-Gawker, Building Zoning Planning Director. The ordinance you have before you, what this essentially does is legalize most of the existing signs, which are currently illegal. And, to be frank, if I were performing my full job, I would be issuing notices of violation to all of those properties that have monument signs now, because that's what our code calls for. I don't think this is a good position to be in of selective enforcement. We've had some direction from council in that regard, but it's still on the books as it is. So I'm in the position, and I've said this before here, that we either need to start enforcing the code and call for the removal of the monument signs, or modify the code to really allow what has been effectively allowed since the ordinance was really originally drafted which came in, sorry, I don't have that in front of me, but I think was part of some of the first legislation passed in the village. So there was an amortization factor included in those original ordinances so that the people would be able to get a return on the investment of the signs they had installed. They were allowed to depreciate over a period of time so that, you know, when they were removed, they would be effectively worthless as far as property goes. That term passed long ago. And so that's the status quo, is we are not currently enforcing provisions of our code. So I think there are two ways we can, I'm happy to modify, tweak this. But, you know, if we don't address this, my intention would be to, you know, move forward with enforcement if that's the will of the body, to not legalize. And there's no deadline, of course, like we'll be flexible and work through this. But that's where the status quo is, and that's really what sort of drove this forward, was let's rectify that issue.
More than 4 years ago, we wanted to do something. I think you're approximately right where that came out. I remember we were mocking Gary Gross because he couldn't find shopping centers without monument signage. You remember that?
Yeah.
I don't think we intended, I don't think we settled on a decision relative to commercial. I think the big conundrum that we faced that caused a delay was the recognition that the institutional realm was actually inoffensive and historical and appropriate. And speaking specifically about the churches, no problem. Commercial's different. And what we had seen come in illegally gave rise to some examples of what we want to prevent, not permit. And there's some that exist today. We've talked about them specifically recently. So I think you ought to take this back and change the premise. The premise that's articulated here is there was never a will to enforce this ordinance. That's not correct. What there was a desire to find a way to both specify the design content of the monument signs, if necessary, that existed, if there was an opportunity to improve the existing condition, for example, at the Crossbridge Church, when they changed the sign, but not to permit this to encroach into the commercial district. And in the meantime, we've observed that there's now examples of this in the residential district. You know, yes, we've talked about one specific example recently on Mashta, a monument sign on a residential property. So this is not, the justification here that there was never a will to enforce this is wrong. It's incorrect, in my opinion. So let's take this back. Let's find the proper justification to regulate the commercial district as we think is best. And if this includes identifiers for street locations, we always had an appetite to discuss that, and design solves all problems if good design is embedded in the regulation. And respect the historical state of affairs with respect to the churches. But this doesn't do any of that.
Ed.
So you said institutional is fine, there's no problem, right?
To me,
well, you said that's
no.
When it was discussed before.
To me, that's fine.
But okay, that's fine. But right now, institutions can't be. The St. Agnes Church had a monument sign in the old thing. Now took it down. Guess what? They can't have a monument sign now.
They just put one in.
They don't have a monument sign.
They just
no. They have a base for a monument sign.
They just put a sign in the.
They don't have a monument.
They put a temporary sign.
Well, temporary. I'm talking about a legal sign.
As of right now, they cannot install a monument sign.
I have no problem. I have no problem with their sign.
Well, okay,
but the regulation doesn't permit it, and we wanted to change that regulation to permit it. That's the point. But this doesn't do what we wanted it to do.
So basically, you're against this because you think that it will be trashy, it won't look good, etc. So you also said if the design was good, it'd be fine.
In commercial,
fine. Well, you want it to look good everywhere.
Of course, I want it to look good.
Fine.
Everywhere.
So would in effect have something, whether it be Jeremy deciding or a couple people deciding when people put an application in, if it looks good, it's approved.
This is another interesting problem because we've always had an antipathy to have design, prescriptive design. So we've wanted to leave things historically in all respects to size, materials, compatibility, because people generally react to the anti-libertarian principle of being told what to design.
I understand that.
So you want to have controls, but you don't want to be too prescriptive.
But then you're also saying you want it to look good.
Yes.
Okay, fine. So then have some people who are the experts, so to speak, or you trust their judgment to make the decision, rather than saying nobody should have them.
I'm not saying no one should have them.
No, but you're saying commercial property shouldn't have them because why? It'll be Las Vegas. It'll be this. It'll be that. By the same token, they might have something very tasteful and very attractive, but by passing the rules or enforcing we have now, they can't have them at all.
I would say, for example, using one of the shopping centers that actually has a monument sign that's illegal, that there's no place for a monument sign in that property because it's just not configured properly. There's no design solution for that as I can see. If somebody could come forward and put up a mock-up of something and change my mind, I'd be happy to see it.
So again, you're saying that if the thing was designed so you'd like it, or whoever the experts would be, it'll be fine.
It doesn't need to be my subjective standard, but I think that as a community, we've always wanted to hold the line on subjective quality in the as-built environment in Key Biscayne.
Well, then everybody is penalized, even those who might have a very attractive sign.
That's not the case at all.
Oh,
we have a zoning code that prescribes design without being overly prescriptive. We live with it. We assess its effectiveness every 10 years or 5 years or however often we want to.
We design what, homes?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
The incentives that result in different design solutions.
Okay.
And the question always is, how well did we do? Do they work? Is it good? Is it qualitative? Do people like it?
All right, let me move over to this side
Chairman,
here.
question. You, in your language, it sounded like you were allowing the signs that are there today, that we haven't been enforcing anyway, that we weren't allowing before. What happens, what's the criteria for signs that want to come up after the fact? This doesn't address that.
No, the intent is...
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry,
it's kind of a two-part. And then the second part is, if there are new signs that want to come around, what kind of design criteria, to the point that the gentlemen are kind of debating over there, what can we put in place? Is there something that we can do here to not only allow what's already there, but also define some type of criteria that what can go move forward? And despite whether it's institutional or whatnot, still have like a design criteria where we've spoken at length and nauseum about other developments, homes or commercial spaces that have to go through some sort of design criteria. Can't we just apply that same type of regulation to monument signs?
So let me go first regarding new signs that could come in.
Yeah.
The intent for this is to limit it as much as possible to one per address, and I'm not sure if we can correct the language for establishment versus address to make it clear that we don't want 59 of them at the square, for instance.
Right. The difference between address with suites versus the entire address.
One per property.
One per property. Yeah.
Okay.
The idea would be one
That's
per
more
property.
detailed. Okay.
So just to be clear for that, that's one per property. There is and in that case, if a property currently doesn't have a sign, they would be able to add it. If they want to replace a current one, they would be able to do that. Whereas what happens now, because the code is clear that they're not allowed, what we've had is people have been, they've been wary of editing existing signage too much. So that's the status quo. Now, regarding content and design guidelines, there is a constitutionality issue. There have been sign ordinances that have made it all the way up to the Supreme Court, if I'm not mistaken. And we have to be, I have to be careful about what we can say will regulate and won't, because we're not supposed to regulate content of the signs. And to be honest, I would have to do more research to figure out if content includes any sort of design guidelines beyond what we currently have, which we do have standards in terms of lighting, in terms of materials, and how this, yeah, so how the signs are illuminated from front, from rear, and some materials and lettering.
Could it be limited to the name of the business?
I can address this. Jeremy's correct. We need to be content neutral, but there are ways that we can develop the code in order to accomplish your goals of aesthetics, as well as building identification. There are ways that we can draft that we believe are constitutional to address that.
Okay, so it sounds like it does need more work.
Well, I think there's some fundamental questions. I'm sorry. Do you want to go ahead? One question, and it's what Councilmember Kaplan's talking about. There's a fundamental question about the policy decision about monument signs. I remember originally when there was the shift to remove monument signs because they were permitted by the county. The village had changed its zoning code on Crandon to push buildings to the front, and there wasn't a need to have monument signs on Crandon. That was the genesis of it, right? So there needs to be that policy discussion, number one. Number two, we have an amortization provision in our code, and that's what Jeremy's talking about. There needs to be a policy discussion. Should we remove it? The amortization provision was drafted at the time to say, hey, as Jeremy said, you have a monument sign, you have X amount of years to remove it, and you amortize out your costs. Do we want to remove that and then the signs sit and Jeremy doesn't feel that there's a code provision that he's not enforcing, and instead they just sit there as legal non-conforming signs? That's another question that has to be answered. The zoning district is another one too. You guys can choose which districts, okay? And then the last one is as far as the materials, like I said, we can work on it. There are plenty of communities that allow monument signs that have very significant, criteria when you install the structure. The structure is not the content. It's like a little building, right? It's a structure, so we can regulate that. So I would lay out, those are some of the things that when we come back we have to deal with, but just what I've been hearing so far.
Okay, Mr. Moss.
Yeah, so I'll just start off that I won't vote on this tonight, so it would be probably a deferral, hopefully. Second, there's got to be a lot more research behind this, right? I even remember 4 years ago or 5 years, whenever it was, we had a map. We showed all the lots, which ones would be affected, which ones are legal, which ones are illegal. If we were to allow this policy, where could they possibly put them? So we can start to see. And I remember when we looked at it, we're just like, wow, some of these lots are very narrow. You're going to get sign after sign after sign, and then you won't have a sign for a while. We talked about heights. We talked about all this kind of stuff. So there has to be some type of perspectives and things that we would look at. I'm not so keen for having in the commercial district signs for businesses. I'm totally fine for signs for the locations of buildings or identifying buildings. And I think that's where we landed last time. I'm only aware of maybe one business, I might be wrong, but one business that actually, I think it was like the T-Mobile at the time, I don't know what it is now, that kind of switched a sign that was being used for identifying, and they flipped it out and turned it into a business sign. And that's kind of what started stirring this all up, because all of a sudden everybody saw this giant pink sign on Crandon and everybody started wondering. So I'm not sure if there's other ones, but that's the only one I know that actually has a business.
Same sign.
But that's the only one in the commercial, right? Right now, that's
the only one that isn't a building identifier.
And are you saying that currently, right now, the sign in front of SunTrust has one also?
Yeah,
in truth.
That's a good point.
But the sign in front of your building, the square, has a sign. Is that legal or illegal?
Our current code, with the amortization and all of that information, it should be removed.
So we never changed that? I thought we said that we were okay with the locations. I thought we changed that for some reason, but
I recall there being a discussion on the amortization, and the council's direction was not to enforce at that time the amortization provision. I also recall us bringing forward an ordinance dealing with some of the condominiums and monument signs, which I believe you guys adopted.
Yeah.
On the issue of monument signs on Crandon, I believe there was never a decision.
Okay.
I can go back and check, but my recollection was that there was a lot of discussion, and ultimately the council decided not to make a change. But we can go back.
Couldn't be repaired
ones. But if our policy is okay with, building identifiers, then we could legalize that, and those would become legal, and then you would only be left with those two signs on Crandon, which would be the issue.
Yeah, and in that case, would that be considered regulating content? Well, I mean,
Well, we're gonna have to,
we'll have to
take
research
a look at it. I
Yeah.
mean, the point is, you can affect this by the size of it, right? And also, there is some exceptions that we can look at as far as directing people to certain areas, because part of sign codes is you can't have signs that are too small, because then people can't see, they get into accidents, right? Or you can't have signs that are too big because it's aesthetically not pleasing to the community. I mean, so the purpose of the sign code is to kind of come somewhere in the middle where you're able to have these businesses be able to advertise, but at the same time have safety for people traveling, and to know where businesses are. So we need to look into that and see there are some things that we can do.
And then I guess a suggestion might be to, if there's general consensus that these could be allowed in institutional under those current parameters, would be we could bring back something entirely different for commercial and proceed with this, but limit it to institutional.
Let me ask a practical question here.
Yeah.
Yes, Allison?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. There's a little delay. If I could just weigh in, I think that I'm very much in agreement with both Frank and Brett's recollections of where we left off and everything we had discussed. I do think that there's more than just the arcade. There's just off the top of my head, Citibank has one. I think it's something that really has to be looked at, has to be studied. I agree with Brett. This is not something that I would vote on tonight. If I were forced to, I would definitely be a no. I think we got bogged down in how difficult this was. And then I, got sort of sidetracked by other things. I think it needs to be dealt with. I think it's going to take a little time, but I would like to really take the time to get it right, to make Crandon look good, and at the same time have the buildings, get the identification that they need to help them, but without making it look like the Vegas Strip.
Okay, thank you. Chad, I was going to ask, how do we prolong this so that we have time for people to bring forward their input and have? So can we defer the item and then bring it back?
Given what's discussed, probably just maybe it should just be withdrawn, and we'll bring back, because it sounds like what you're discussing may go beyond the title of this item anyways. And I don't know if you want to have a separate discussion to give more policy discussion on this, or if you want us to bring something back from what we heard tonight.
I think you got to get a bunch of stakeholders into a room, sit down, and look at this thing before we do anything. And I open public hearings so that if there's any comments, so that we can get them on the record, and it will be part of the next iteration of this.
Michelle Esteves, 425 Grapevine Drive. Yes, I mean, it looks beneficial for the commercial district, and I hope that eventually will be approved. But I recall that, for example, our square sign have a little bit of damage, and we don't want to even touch it, because that was, I recall very clear, that was the decision, not only for our sign, but also for condominiums that I manage. Grapetree also, the sign we have just maintained and painted it the same. We have to intention to change, but we have not touched it for that reason. And the definition of institution. What is under institution? What about if tomorrow something crazy show up? I mean, they're gonna allow to have that. I know the wording, and I read that the statutes also. But I think that definition for institution, I have to be looking to it, because institution, what we have in mind and here are the churches. So let's look into that also. Let's go back to the drawing table. I think that monument size should be approved with a very strict criteria, because also 5 feet, I mean, I am 6'2", so 5 feet sign, and it's probably the sign of the square that was approved by the Dade County. So even if it is there, it's big. But also for businesses, what do we do today? We use our app, our phone. We don't look for today for a specific address in a way. We look for in our phone for the business that we're going to visit. And also for, not for establishment or address, per lot. Because again, per establishment or per businesses, it's got to go back to the drawing table. I mean, let's get involved, the Chamber of Commerce and a few, their own business own. Well, shopping centers, there are 3 shopping centers that they have one owner. So that's going to be regulated by them mainly than anybody else. So let's go to the drawing table and let's move on to our use of this room.
Public hearing is still open.
Thank you.
Go on forward.
And the Herrera 250 Fernwood Road. I'm glad you guys are addressing this issue. It's very important for our business in our village. And we have over 90% of small families running businesses in every single mall. And then we do appreciate, you guys, you are a positive input with this. It's something that the community will love it. And then a lot of businesses coming out and getting new in our community that will need to be known by others. So like where Mr. Elondo has his office, no one knows the Spring Mall.
I don't want to know.
There's a business there. No one knows this. It's like a church. No one knows there's like over 20 businesses running there, and then people are even aware of the many facilities. That the kids go there for school, for sports, so many things. So we need to take into account every single commercial mall, get the stakeholders of each mall involved. So because we need the participation, and then for they to have same equal rights, that would be extremely important. Not you guys as a policy maker, taking into account every single mall for they to be able to succeed like the rest. So that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other people stepping forward, public hearing is now closed. So the item is before us. The suggestion from the attorney is to withdraw the item for the time being. Mr. Manager, then I guess the direction from the council would be to organize a stakeholders meeting and have different factions there so that we can talk about this and then bring back something that will pass muster.
Will do, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Do I need a motion to withdraw the item?
Motion to withdraw.
Second.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is the first reading of an ordinance of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, amending Chapter 30 Zoning and Land Development Regulations of the Village Code of Ordinances by amending Section 30-30 Nonconforming Structures and Uses and Section 30-100 Single-Family and Two-Family Districts regarding finished floor elevation requirements for additions to single-family and two-family homes, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Moving second. The item is before us. Do you want to give some brief background?
Yeah, so the background on this was that there was a code change a couple of years ago that was a fairly comprehensive look at our single family and duplex zoning. There was a word change in that code regarding finished floor elevations that when we looked at it more closely realized it really prohibited additions from being built below our standard for base flood elevation, which is BFE +1. We understand that was not the intent of the rewrite, so I think this corrects that. I tried to, when we were drafting this, I know their council had some question about what size should be permitted and that sort of thing. So we tried to draft this in a way that there is sort of the one variable that we could change easily between first, second reading is the square footage number. It's important to understand the context for that square footage number. So the way non-conforming rules work and the way a non-conforming property functions is you always have to reference back to when the statute made that property non-conforming. So when I say you are allowed 800 square feet, for instance, of additions, for a Mackle home that was built before there were base flood elevation requirements, the base flood elevation requirement came in 1972. So you'd be looking at cumulative additions since 1972. So if you're, you know, some of these houses have been modified several times. And you'd have to go back to that floor plan pre-implementation of the flood ordinance or from FEMA. So that would be the standard, and then BFE +1 came in 2017. So those are the two critical dates are 1972 and 2017, where the different times that we set floor elevations. So I think this certainly addresses it. I think it would effectively allow nearly any addition to a Mackle home the way it's drafted now. I think, you know, that's a matter of policy, whether we think that's the right number or if we want to really limit these to encourage redevelopment.
Okay. Let me open the public hearing. Public hearing is open on this ordinance. Seeing no one come forward, public hearing is closed. On the item before us, Mr. Stone.
One minor thing, discuss with Jeremy, I think, where it says base flood elevation, it should be say FEMA base flood elevation, differentiated from our base flood elevation, which is FEMA +1. So I think Jeremy's gonna make that change, if that's okay with everybody. Number two.
Okay, wait a minute. Listen, Chad, he's making an amendment.
So I understand what Councilmember London wants to accomplish. It's a clarification. I mean, I think if asked, we would tell you that our BFE is BFE +1. So
Clarification for the record, or do we need to specify it in the ordinance?
Well, do we say base flood elevation or minimum finished floor elevation in here, I think?
No, it just says you have to bring it up to code. That's
to code, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can add a clarification, spell it out, that what we mean by minimum finished floor elevation is base flood elevation, which is BFE +1 foot. That's what you're saying, right?
I was saying in the code, when it says, excuse me, base flood elevation, that's FEMA base flood elevation, differentiating our base flood elevation.
It's capitalized though, it's capitalized in our code means that's how we define it. But we can refer back and say base flood elevation as stated in chapter 10 of our code.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, does that work? And
Sure.
then as we amend base flood elevation, we don't have to amend this again.
And then the next thing is, and I forgot to discuss with you, Jeremy, I thought about it. Steve, we're talking about the inundation of Key Biscayne if we change various elevations of streets and stormwater system, and we talked about various houses that might be impacted. By us doing this, in other words, telling somebody they can now put the addition onto a low-lying house, and now we're going to go ahead and put something in that particular street. I forgot how many houses that are affected by that. Are we really being fair to those people, or are we notify people ahead of time that going ahead with this particular plan for our storm sewer system that they might be impacted? So if they go ahead and put a addition on, it's at their own risk.
So I'll make sure I understand what you're saying. So if we're saying that if you're going to put an addition on an existing house, which may actually be below what is currently being flooded by our system or as a result, they may get a false sense of security that they do that. So obviously we haven't got that approved. We haven't moved forward on it, but yes, I think we should. And I think we should with anything like we're doing with the seawall as well. We should begin to notify anybody who comes in for a permit.
So anybody comes
dangerous
in now, we
limit
tell them, we're considering this, you know, this, you might be affected by it. And the Mackle House. In other words, anybody comes in,
I understand what you're saying, yes. And I think we're doing that currently for the seawall ordinance. Since we didn't do an
I know
ordinance,
that.
we're doing guidelines instead.
Right.
So we could do something similar for this as well.
Okay, good.
Okay. Mr. Moss.
Okay. Yeah, you know, I looked at this. I think that there's a bit of a strange written area because you're basically giving three scenarios, right? If you're 800 square feet or less and under 50%, you're allowed to go ahead and build at the same level as the house if it's below BFE. The option number two is if you're above 800 square feet but below the 50%, then you're allowed, the addition has to be at regulation, but you can maintain your existing home where it is. And if you go over the 50%, you have to tear it all down or lift your house somehow magically, right? The middle one doesn't make any sense because at the end of the day, if we're talking about flood insurance and things like that, you know, even our CRS system, they're going to calculate the house at the lowest elevation. So now you built this elevation higher and lower, but you're still getting calculated at the lower elevation. So you're not helping them in flood insurance. You're not helping in the CRS rating or any of this other stuff. So it's either, I see just either you allow it, and if they go over a certain amount, then you have to bring it all up to code. The way the code used to be, and remember, we changed the minimum to maximum, not intending to affect this part of the code, has always been the 50%, right? If you go above the 50%, you're gonna have to bring everything up to code. If you're below the 50%, you can go ahead and make an addition to your home and tie it into the existing. I don't think it was our intention to put a hardship on people who have existing homes or want to maintain an older home or even want to build maybe not at the full capacity of what they could build today. They build something smaller in the intent that 30 years or 20 years down the road, they might want to put the rest of the house in additions. And there are people that do this. So they would find out that all of a sudden, and by the way, BFE is going to continually being raised incrementally. We know this is going to happen. My house that I built 5 years ago is already non-compliant by 1 foot, and not my fault. Village of Key Biscayne code told me I could not build higher, so I built it where it was supposed to be, not knowing that 2 years later I would not be in compliance anymore. So I think we have to be a little bit careful. I mean, you know, I like this idea that, hey, if you do this, it's at your own risk. But I think that, you know, if looking at it, my first impression would to get rid of the 800 square feet, keep it at the 50%, take out this new paragraph of B, which I think puts this like kind of weird difference between the two. And that's how we had it to begin with. And it's up to the owners to decide where they want to put their elevation, knowing that if they're very low, that they could be affected. Some people may not be that low, but don't want to have to step up, 3 feet to their addition. But they still may be okay with flood in the practical sense for the next 50 or 60 years. So I don't know. I think it's a little bit too much. I'm more in favor of just keeping it at the 50%, which is what the code has always been. And I thank Jeremy for putting this out there. We told him just put something in here so we have something to discuss. But I think it might be a little bit too much.
Okay. Frank, you're up.
Why, picking up on this theme, first of all, let's go back to the beginning. When we did this change, this cover memo, which by the way has whole sentences completely missing, it's impossible to read this thing. There's text in this memo that just didn't make it, and I don't really follow the thread of the analysis that supports this ordinance because of either typos or lost text. But the notion that this change from maximum to benchmark improvements to the current BFE +1 was unintended struck me as controversial. I don't think it was unintended. I think it was intended. So the effect of that was, let me try this. You wanted to create enough flexibility so that people within the floodplain, recognizing the risk that they're under, still had the discretion and the right to improve their property if they choose to do so. So long as they complied with the 50% rule, and I'm not talking about 50% in terms of structure area, 50% of value. There's two 50% embedded in this conversation. So that was the intent, I think, to give people discretion. And if they want to be at risk on the historical footprint and build up a little bit and create a new space, and they can do so in compliance with zoning, good on you. I don't know why you concluded that that was unintended.
Well, part of the reason we decided, I thought it was unintended was because the first couple of years it wasn't enforced, because it wasn't noticed, and which this was with my staff who helped draft the ordinance, and so they didn't pick up on that being an intent and something to enforce. It wasn't until we made the connection between the two disparate sections of the code that referencing from one section of the code to the other, it was like, oh, wait a second, this means with this maximum number that we really need to be putting all additions at that level. So, considering that, somebody who was here through the entire process, shepherding it through, helping to draft it, was one of the people that didn't pick up on that enforcement change. I think that was definitely part of it.
There's been a surprising number of floodplain renovations that I'm just walking around the island and running and jogging and so forth. And there's some really beautiful jobs. Surprising. I think 15 years ago we didn't expect that this would be the case, but there's some very nice design solutions. But what I think I find is you simply step up and you create a little envelope that's raised.
Okay, I'll give you a quick example. So, for instance, you could have a house, and we're dealing with this right now. We have a house where the owner wants to move the front, and he's in a master bedroom, wants to move the wall 5 feet out so they can expand the size of the master bathroom and the closet. He would have to make that part 5 feet higher than his existing home and basically climb up a ladder with the way the code was today. Not what Germany has in front of us, but what the code is today. Makes absolutely no sense to give that hardship to somebody who just wants to add 5 feet to their lot. They would have to have a 5 foot difference. Mm-hmm. So it makes no sense in those cases. So some people, and what I want to make sure is that we don't go after people who, and I know this is an issue that we deal with, is that, overbuilding, right? So some people want to max out everything they can do on their site. Other people may come and say, I only want to build half, and then later on when I have a little bit of money, I want to add to it. Right. But then also now they have to figure out height differences that they're not going to know. So what you're going to do is motivate people just to build it all out now because they don't know what it would be like. So, I kind of like the idea that some people don't build it out, but they're going to start feeling like, who knows what the change is going to be, and then we're going to be at different elevations.
Well, the anecdote you just shared is truly silly. So the law of unintended consequences, it's hard to anticipate every contingency that comes along. But getting back to the policy driver, I think the policy driver was to not force people in the risky floodplain condition that they're in to have to get out of it if that decision is premature for their family and their discretion, and give them enough flexibility to be able to improve their property, but not in derogation of our community rating system and in compliance with the 50% rule always, because it has to be that way. I don't think this does that. Another thing that occurred to me, I think 3030, which is the amendatory predicate for all of this, is contrary to this, because I think 3030 says we want to freeze frame lawful nonconforming and essentially allow it to be repaired to keep in code compliance, but amortize it or improve it to a point where it can be brought up to current regulation as feasibly as possible. I think that's what 3030 says.
Yeah, I mean, it does explicitly mention expansions. That, we should be, we should regulate and
the policy is to amortize out non-complying conditions in 3030.
If you go with the 50%.
What would the solution be, in hearing the discussion, to just tie it to the substantial improvement threshold that FEMA requires, and then you're consistent with your flood policy and FEMA policies, and it accomplishes that you'll be able to increase, but it will be up to a certain percentage, just like under the flood code.
But let me clarify. FEMA's 50% rule is based on value, not on square footage.
Correct.
This is actually tremendously important and great that the village has its own additional policy regarding square footage. It clarifies a lot of other issues that are a little murky in the building code. So, good work.
That's correct. But to address, I was trying to address Councilmember Moss's story about that addition. And, one way to address that, if you have a small addition is, that wouldn't trigger it, right?
Right.
Presumably, right? A little bathroom expansion under that, but just a thought.
I like that thought. Does that thought seems both consistent with existing law and policy and consistent with our own policy.
I remember, maybe it's changed, but I thought if you increase the square footage by more than 25%, there was a county rule that said you have to build it up, bring everything up to current code. Forget about the 50% for FEMA. There was a county code for size and regarding to current regulations, impact windows, and everything else.
There's a Florida building code rule, but it's not at 25%. It's 50.
It used to be 125. They changed it.
Yeah. No. The building code is actually 50% of your alteration work area. That will bring up the whole entire code to. But that's not in the residential section of single family though. That's mostly.
There's
It
still
used to be.
there's still
Actually, it is in residential
It used to be 25%. Again, that's years ago. Maybe it's changed. But you had to bring everything up to code.
There's three issues, okay? You have the zoning code, you have the flood code, and you have the building code, which
Right.
all have percentages.
I'm talking about building code.
Yes.
Building goes 50%.
In other words, the addition can't exceed 50% of the principal structure.
Or you bring the entire building up.
And again,
It's
at the
square
time
footage.
it became non-conforming,
Yeah.
which would be 1974 in the case of the Mackles. So potentially substantial additions since then.
Okay, let's see. What we have in front of us is not yet perfect, but it's on first reading. So why don't you two get with the administration here and let's come back with substantial proposals instead of, we think that or that, and we got to see all these things through. So let's do that and come back and make it a better ordinance on second reading. In the meantime, let me call for a public hearing, see if anyone needs to speak on this item. Seeing no one come forward, public hearing is closed. So I think if everyone's okay with that, let's do that. Let's pass it on first reading, and in between, and if you need more time, we can ask Chad to push back the time it comes back to us. But I think that whatever time it takes, if we make this a better ordinance, it'll be the right thing. And I really liked your example. That really encapsulates it very well.
No, and this is timely because we have applications that our interpretation
is important.
Yeah, I think we can get this done for
it's
April.
timely. So we'll move quickly.
Okay.
And just to clarify, the amendment that Councilmember London wanted, we would include relating to the clarification that base flood elevation as provided in chapter 10 of our code, right? When we bring it
Yeah.
back on.
When you bring it back, have that in there already, okay?
I know.
All right, any further discussion?
Nope.
Madam Clerk?
Okay, as amended. Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Sardinius?
Yes.
Mayor Roscoe?
Yes.
Councilmember Kaplan?
Yes.
Councilmember London?
Yes.
Councilmember McCormick?
Good enough.
We border.
Not with us.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Folks, we got a lot of stuff to cover, and so let's see if we can be very judicious with our time here.
Okay, the next, sorry.
Go ahead.
The next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving an expenditure of funds in the amount of $75,000 to the beneficiary of Mr. Ronald Herbal, providing for findings, providing for authorization, and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Been moved and second. The item is before us. I think this is something we absolutely have to do. Any further discussion?
Question?
We have to do this, and I want to do this. The bit about the village believes that this isn't appropriate seems
We don't think it's appropriate. We think this is 100% appropriate to use your home rule authority and as a public purpose. We just believe that there is a mandate to pay that we don't think is applicable here. So we're doing this in our discretion as opposed to being mandated.
Do we need to say?
We don't need to. We can remove it if you want.
It says it's a flat out assertion of
Or say it differently.
unsuitability. I really.
That's fine. We can take it out. I have no objection to that.
It's the middle of the whereas is in the second page.
Let it go.
Okay.
I'm ready to go.
Madam
Let it
Clerk?
go.
Okay, the resolution is amended. Councilmember Sardinius?
Yes.
Mayor Roscoe?
Yes.
Councilmember Kaplan?
Yes.
Councilmember London?
Yes.
Councilmember McCormick? I think she did leave. Okay, Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Motion carries. The next item is a capital project authorizing resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving the purchase of one 2024 Chevrolet Silverado 2500 HD four-wheel drive crew cab high water vehicle from Alan J. Automotive Management Inc., DB, doing business as Alan J. Fleet Sales in an amount not to exceed $85,000, providing for authorization, providing for implementation, and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Motion carries.
That's the way to legislate.
Okay, let's do really two very, very important things. Well, there's more than two, but from the manager, that will take a little bit of time. Let's do a conversation first about motor scooters, and then the community initiatives follow.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So as we wait for the mayor to get back, go ahead and read through the documents that you have. And I apologize for not getting these into the book, but we actually had some additional information come forward from Commissioner Regalato's office today that helped us with the timeline. The intention of this is to frame a conversation about the options that we have available. It's broken down in, it talks initially up front, the anticipated timeline, and I can go through that when the mayor comes back. Our current authorities that we have as a village, if the county ordinance goes into effect, what would be the additional authorities we would have? And then following on some of the variables that we can consider as we move forward for our subsequent ordinance. I think we need to have the mayor come back here to run the meeting before we go forward.
Well, let's see past the gavel.
Can somebody act as the vice mayor?
Vice mayor's up there.
Our vice mayor is,
She's up there.
well, I have some experience.
If you want to go grab the gavel and
Yeah, he's got the gavel now. Take it, Oscar.
Oscar's got it.
Start holding it.
Is it timely while we're waiting for our mayor to report briefly on the state legislature?
Sure. So I can give before we go into that. So as you know, soon after we had the incident, we were working with Representative Lopez, and we were offering up some possible options on how we would want to approach, or one way we want to approach regulating electric bikes and motorized scooters. And as we began to think about it more deeply, one of the consideration we said maybe age is one of the most important things that we should look at in terms of regulation. So she was able to get that into a House bill and move forward very quickly through the committee in the House, passed through the House as a full vote, then went on to the Senate, and unfortunately did not make it through in the Senate. So currently we do not have the ability to regulate by age. Obviously this conversation we'd be having right now would be very different. What we do have the ability to regulate, and as you see on there, is by the device itself, location, and then Chad can also bring up, as we get deeper in the conversation, some additional variables that we might be able to consider on how we want to regulate going forward. But it looks like the mayor is going to be a little longer, so I'll go ahead and read out the timeline. After talking to Commissioner Regalato's office today, and you do have a copy in the back of this packet of the latest ordinance. Our anticipated timeline is on March 19th of this month. Miami-Dade County will read at the Board of County Commissioners the first reading of this ordinance. Right now, we have to, normally the Board of County Commissioners has a 4 to 6 week municipal notification process. But in order for us to move that faster, we're going to request that time period be waived. That will allow the item to go to the April Transportation, Mobility, and Planning Committee. However, in that period, our time period will run out at 60 days, so I would recommend that we would extend the Key Biscayne ordinance for additional 60 days at the April 9th council meeting, with the anticipation that in later May, the ordinance will be heard for a second time at the Board of County Commissioners. We would then have to, if you look into the ordinance, this doesn't come straight through the ordinance itself. We would then have to do an interlocal agreement with the Department of Transportation and Public Works. I would anticipate that would take another month. We've already been in communication with them, and we can begin to draft that as this ordinance goes through. We would then, approximately in July, if this time period continues to follow, be able to set our own permanent ordinance in July. And then part of this ordinance the county is putting forward will require us a 60-day public awareness campaign. And so we would do that between August and September, which would allow us to put the ordinance into effect in September. Long timeline, but it's something we're gonna have to pay attention in detail as we go forward, making sure that we move the county quickly and also move ourselves as well. So Mayor, you're back. I don't know whether you want to proceed this conversation with any additional comments.
May I ask a question?
Just keep going.
Okay.
Real quick on the Senate, did this just get caught up in sausage making, or was this targeted for exclusion?
No, it was a 114-0 vote. This provision was basically written onto a greater bill, a larger bill. There was a budget implication of that bill, and because of the budget implication, the vote came up no. It was not specifically targeted towards this item at all.
That's my question.
What are we proposing tonight? Anything?
We're just proposing an opportunity to have a first, I wanted to lay out the timeline because I think it's important that you see that timeline, that this unfortunately is not going to move very quickly. But I also want to give you a copy of the county ordinance that you could read it and let you know that it's going to go to the county on March 19th. If you have any feedback that you want to share with me, Chad, or the mayor, we'll probably attend that meeting. We'll be able to provide that input at that time.
So the only option we have tonight, if we want to do something, or when the ban expires, is to say they can't be on our roadways, sidewalks, or parks, correct?
Well, we already have the authority by parks, and we already have that authority on our own roads.
Well, yeah, then soon we get granted, but
Like Crandon Boulevard is
right now, that's the only thing we can do.
right, and we can also regulate by device as well.
All right.
By device, so we can
We
pick,
can say class 1's okay, class 2 and 3 are not okay?
yes, you can designate by devices.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay, but let's go. Let's go big picture here. Okay, what are the things that we can and we cannot do? Because this continues to be an item of discussion throughout the community, and I think that we need to have everybody on the same page, because we can't have a discussion if people are thinking you could do this and you can't do that. So I think this is really a vitally important piece. Okay, what are the things that we can and cannot do? And obviously there are some restrictions in time that we have. It's like we can't go back to the legislature right away. So, we've got to be able to do things in the meantime.
Right. So I'm going to let the attorney go over what we can and cannot do, and he's done a pretty good, detailed, exhaustive review of state law and county ordinance as well.
So as far as under state law, what we can and cannot do, in fact, it may be helpful if I'll just kind of go through a little bit of the intent and give a little background for everybody of what's occurred, and then get into that. So, the Chapter 316 of the Florida statutes, it's the Uniform Traffic Control Law of the state. It was enacted to make uniform traffic laws apply throughout the state, and its several counties and uniform traffic ordinances to apply in all municipalities. It's an express preemption. Okay, so the state has completely preempted in this field with limitations, which we'll get into. When this was adopted in 1971, the purpose of the act was to eliminate hodgepodge of ordinances which vary as to language and penalty, resulting in the inconvenience and hazards of travelers. So at that time, a lot of different governments had different ordinances regarding traffic, so the state took that power away and said it's uniform. As it relates to the e-bikes and scooters, I think it's important to give you a little background. So originally the scooters in 2003, the Attorney General and the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles determined that the motorized scooters were illegal under Florida. So in 2003, the scooters were illegal. 2006, the legislature confirmed that in a statute that they weren't permitted. In 2010, the legislature started to loosen it up for scooters and allow for scooters on sidewalks if cities and counties wanted. And then in 2019, the legislature created the Micromobility and Scooters Act, which is what we have today as our law. And that bill was put forward by the private commercial industry for motorized scooters, which permitted motorized scooters on our streets. As to e-bike,
but as to rental units.
No, it also included motorized scooters, personal too. So at that time, in 2019, the law was to allow for motorized scooters. So it was the first time that they were prohibited. In 2019, the legislature changed the law to permit them, personal motorized scooters, and then they created this micromobility definition, which created the private industry for rental. Okay. The electric bikes has a different timeline. So the electric bikes, prior to 2020, you had to be 16 years of age to drive electric bikes. In 2020, the legislature amended the law to remove that definition and to create the electric bike definitions that we've been talking about today. And when that law was created, they specifically allowed electric bikes to be ridden on our streets. So it went from an age requirement that you had to be 16 to ride these, eliminating that age requirement, and then providing the ordinance that we've talked about. So, I'm sorry, the statute that we've talked about previously. Now, this leads us to what can we do, right? Which is what the question was. So we can adopt an ordinance through the exercise of our powers under Chapter 316.008, which is not the bicycle statute, but the e-bike statute. But the e-bike statute says that under our authority underneath that act, we can act. So what does that mean? And that's what there's been a lot of discussion. So the legislature in section 316.002 provided that our powers were to adopt ordinances to control certain traffic movement or parking. That's what we were allowed to do. So the idea was that if we wanted to say you can't have a vehicle on a particular street, you could do that, for example. But it was for traffic movement. It wasn't for persons, it was for traffic movement. The law...
So we could set a speed limit, for example.
Yes, but I believe we have to consult with the county on that. That's a little tricky because where we are in Miami-Dade County. But yes, that is one of the options underneath there, generally. In section 316.007, the legislature also provided that any of these ordinances that we adopt, we cannot adopt an ordinance on a matter that's already covered by this chapter, the legislature has spoken on, unless they expressly authorize us to do that. Now that's important because when Representative Lopez filed her bill this session, which would have provided for local governments to adopt age limits, if you read the House staff analysis, their analysis provides this bill expressly authorizes local governments to adopt age limits. Okay, so as I stated before, we can adopt ordinances that that regulate traffic movement or parking unless the legislature gives us express authority to adopt another type of ordinance. So which they haven't, okay? Because the age bill did not pass, the one that allowed us. So as I mentioned before, I know there's been a lot of discussion about age, right? As I said, the legislature expressly eliminated age. When they did that, they allowed electric bikes to default to the general bicycle regulations where there is no age limit. There is a requirement that you have to have a helmet, but there's no age limit if you're under 16. So our position is, because of that, when the legislature prescribes the manner in which something is done, it acts as a prohibition against it being done in any other way. So in this instance, like I said, the legislature has specified who may ride an e-bike on public roads and streets of the state, which is the same as a bicycle. But it states its only limitation is under the age of 16, you have to have a helmet. Therefore, I do believe that that legislation that Representative Lopez put forward would have given us that authority to regulate age. There's also been some discussions about other jurisdictions and what they're doing. There's been discussion about Bal Harbour. I can tell you I've been personally involved in Bal Harbour. I can tell you that Bal Harbour is not doing anything different than what we are doing. They actually have a more unique circumstance than us because they actually have no public roads under their control because they have 2 state roads, they have private roads, and they're single family, and they have a beach path. So they have a different scenario. However, where we are somewhat similar is that we are engaging the county to discuss what we can do on Crandon, and I believe they may engage FDOT, but I want to let you know that I'm, well aware of what they're doing, and they're not doing anything different than what we're doing. As per other cities,
and that's because your law firm represents them also.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean,
well, some people might not know.
Well, and I mean, yes, and we have been studying this obviously internally, and we have come forward with our opinion on that consistently. So as it relates to other jurisdictions which have been raised, so again, these are new laws. So there are cities that that have adopted laws pre-2020. So on their books, they have regulations that predated the existence of the law today. There's also cities that regulate micro-mobility devices, which is, again, a defined term under state law, which relates to rental bikes and scooters, not the personal. And when you're in the scenario of a rental type situation, you can regulate more than when you're not. For example, when we had Lime Bikes here in this community, they wanted to store their bikes on our sidewalks. And we said, sure, but we had an agreement on a lot of different things that we limited them. So when you see Coral Gables and other cities that there's requirements on age or other consent, whatever it may be, that's because it's not that they're regulating them traversing on the road. It's because those companies came to the city and said, we want to store these on your right of way, and they're going to be making, for commercial gain. And the city said, you can't do that unless you have an agreement with us. So that's how that came about. As it relates to maybe, and I've only seen one city that has an age limit, I can't comment on that. You've heard, my feelings on the topic tonight. And, again, the law is in its infancy. And, hopefully we can get a bill through next session to provide further authority for us. I think the one thing that I understand, and I enjoyed the debate from many residents who have contacted me, many lawyers who have a lot of opinions, and I respect all their opinions and I listen to them because this is a very important topic, and I'm always willing to learn. But one thing I think we all agreed on is that the law is not well written. It needs to be fixed, and I hope there is a solution. So. Just to summarize, I do think we can regulate, we can prohibit traffic movements on our roads. We can talk about different classes of vehicles, Councilmember London. And then eventually, if we want to talk about a more permanent ban, then we'll have that discussion because, coming with a permanent ban has its own issues that we should discuss, and we will at that time. So I guess that's it. I'm open for questions on it. I know I gave a thorough overview, but we've been, over the last couple of weeks, as you can imagine, Steve and myself have been working extremely hard with the community, with people reaching out to us, as well as the county and the state. And, this kind of summarizes our collective thoughts on the issues.
Okay, so let's work through these. So one option is we keep the ban on until we are able to have more of a nuanced approach to get a better regulation. That's one option we have.
Right, and I think it would make sense to wait, at least in that option, what you're saying, because the county issue, again, we've talked about the jurisdictional issue. It would help to see what they do, when we go and do our final regulation on this. Yes.
So in that scenario, you're saying let's get a second emergency ban in place for another 60 days. Is that what you're saying?
I didn't hear the exact timeline, but I do think it would. If we're going to come forward with a set of regulations, we need to understand how we can regulate in our community. And since there's pending legislation at the county, I do think it would be in the village's best interest to see what happens there. Yes.
To answer your question,
so is it 60 days? I don't know.
Yes. To answer your question directly, we passed this. I believe it was on February 13th, which would then allow us. I think it actually comes up.
We passed it on February 16th.
16th. Okay, so it comes to about, because we only 29 days in February, it comes up to about April 15th. That is, obviously that would make it through our April 9th, but April 9th council meeting. But I would recommend that we would extend it on April 9th. That would allow us to go to about mid-June, given the timeline that I know as of right now, based on the fact that it's going to go to the Board of County Commissioners for first reading in March. it appears that it would come out in May. It appears. It doesn't know it's going to happen.
Yeah, you
but I
never
do
know.
believe we ought to get those additional 60 days to allow us to see what's going to move forward with the county.
But I will say that, you know, again, that's an emergency ordinance, and we do have the ability to renew it. But the intent of that is that we do bring it forward to a permanent ordinance. So we do need, to have direction to start that discussion, so we can draft the ordinance and bring it forward, whether it's at May or June or whatever it may be. We need to do that.
Okay, so
But I want to make one thing. I know you were out, Mr. Mayor, what you were doing, but I want to make one clear. And I think you know this, but I want everyone else to know it, is that the ordinance itself delegates the authority to come to an agreement with a municipality with the Department of Transportation and Public Works. So once the ordinance passes, we would then have to go into an interlocal agreement. So that would also add additional time to the ordinance itself.
But we've already met with Kava and her team, and we've stressed that this is very important, and so hopefully we should be able to do that within that timeline.
Right.
But you never know with county. Yes. Okay. So do we have? Because to bring it back as a consensus of council that unless something changes drastically, that we would be in a position to extend it for another 60 days, because we'll need that time. Not because, maybe not all of you may not agree, but it needs to be extended in order for us to see these things play out.
Well,
I was told that, part of the document, that you cannot have an emergency ordinance past the 60 days.
Okay,
You can't have
well,
a second one.
that's
Is that
not
correct?
That's not correct.
Sure. So I saw that myself. We did not declare a state of emergency.
Right.
Okay. We adopted an emergency ordinance. It's completely different. Number
Fine,
one.
okay.
Number
I just wanna
two.
make sure.
That particular statute that was circulated dealt with ordinances adopted pursuant to Chapter 252 of the Florida Statutes, and I think Chapter 381 of the Florida Statutes. One deals with declaration of emergencies, and the other one deals with public health. So
Not having to do
the-
with 316.
Nothing to do with 316 or our charter, not to mention 316.008 expressly provides for it.
I just want to make sure I was aware.
That's fine. I just wanted to respond to it because a number of you did call me on that. So,
my understanding is that even if we wanted to do a permanent ban and we give direction to them, we would still have to do a 60-day extension no matter what, because that's going
Correct.
to take 2 readings anyways.
Correct. Yes. Correct. Right.
All right.
So we're gonna do it, that's
So
it.
there's no
That's why I wanted to get consensus here, because we're going to have to
for
do
the
it.
extension.
Exactly.
Okay.
Can we
All right.
discuss after a little bit
Yeah,
more
yeah.
about?
So,
Okay.
so Steve, that's clear, and
Yes,
so
sir.
and Chad. So for the April meeting, let's get it on because we're going to need that time.
And what I
Okay.
wanted to do, Mr. Mayor, the reason why we gave you this packet is for you all to consider out what you want to do in the meantime. This is as much information as we have right now. Obviously, both Chad and I are available if you have more questions. But I want to make sure that when we do come forward to the time that we do need to consider what we do next, that you have as much information as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is a way to go forward to our own ordinance. Okay.
Yeah.
So on that regards.
Yeah, so I think that where I've stand for years. 2 years ago, I wanted to permanently ban these things, and now we're here. We're actually discussing this, right? I see that the 8 years or almost 8 years I've been sitting on this dais, I have not gotten more complaints, and this is before the incident, about these bicycles and these motorcycles that children who do not have driver's license are driving around. I don't think anything else even comes close to the amount of complaints that has come in from there. And after this ban has been passed, I don't think I've received so many thank yous on any other item of the amount of change that happened in the key. Where I stand on this, and I think a lot of you may do also, but I believe that, and like Luis de la Cruz said, these are electric motorcycles. And I'm not against mobility devices. This is not about being against mobility devices. This is about having a driver's license to drive a motorcycle. And I think that's what we all want. Now, the state is not allowing us to do it. and we're put in a position where we don't really have much choice other than to ban them until they can fix that ordinance, right? I'm not really sure with what our manager, Steve, has presented to us of, well, we're going to wait and see what they're going to do at the county. I don't know why we're going through that. I might be missing something.
Well,
but
I'm not telling you can wait. I'm just giving you the timeline of what's happening. I'm giving you
Okay.
putting everything option on the table for you.
Okay,
to
great.
consider.
I thought
I'm
it
not
was
making
that.
any
I thought it was
recommendations.
like to start and do the ban at in August or whatever. Okay, good. Because I think we should get this thing written up and brought back to us for first reading in April for a permanent ban. I want to make sure that the people out there, because I've talked to a lot of these kids and parents, that this 60-day ban was not a reflection, just pause because of an incident. Not my understanding. My understanding is that that's all we could do in an emergency ordinance, because an ordinance takes 2 readings and we would still be sitting here going through the readings. This would have been just first reading and nothing would have been able to happen. So that was the only reason why there was a 60-day. This is not a temporary ban for reflection and then everybody can go back on their bikes. So I'm not sure where all of you stand, but where I stand, I tell a lot of people, if you're under 16, I don't see this coming back for you.
So I'm confused because you say permanent ban, but you're talking about a ban until such time that we can regulate it.
Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
Okay, because
So-
permanent ban to me means never again.
That's not a permanent ban.
That's not a permanent ban.
Permanent bans be permanent.
Correct, but I heard permanent ban.
Okay, it would be an ordinance pass until which we would have to undo.
We're all saying the same thing.
So yes, that's what we mean about it. And maybe we can even write it in the ordinance that if the state allows, driver's license required, maybe the ordinance automatically will turn to whatever it needed to be and doesn't need to be passed, whatever. I also, I can tell you, I've already met with parents, friends of mine who kids own these, and they came up to me and said, thank you. Thank you for stopping this. My kid even owned one, but it's ridiculous. And now I'm seeing them ride bikes. I'm getting calls from people saying, my kid is riding the bicycle for the first time in years. And I said, oh, that's nice. They had a motorized no, they never had a electric bike. I'm like, what do you mean? They said they were too embarrassed to ride it because they would get made fun of if you were caught riding a regular bicycle. And now they're out there riding them. I see dads and kids. It's amazing the difference. So there's no problem here in Key Biscayne that if you don't have a driver's license, you can't ride a bicycle. I mean, that's not an argument for me. So I think that regulation, education, and enforcement is correct. Regulate, have a driver's license, educate, know the driver license laws with a driver's license, and enforce people with driver's license. That's it. One thing that I do think that we should look at, you're starting to see now these kids, or some kids are underage, are now driving the golf carts. And I think our golf cart penalties are too soft. $75. Is that what the first offense is? Driving under the age?
We were told we're restricted by state law to what we could charge for the penalties.
We have a variety of different penalties, but on some of the violations it is $75. And other violations it kicks you to the state law, state provisions. So they're generally, I believe, the chief is there. I think it's $750, and then I can look it up for you.
But is there a problem if we brought
75,
it to the same as what we're doing right now, $250 and $500 for a golf cart underage driving?
The $75 number could be increased.
Because I don't see why not. Again, this is a life safety issue. You're seeing more of this. That may be a deterrent from parents allowing it or kids doing it and having a much steeper fine on those as well. Let
me see.
Again, I see the majority of people on this key in favor of the driver's license age, and if we can't get that, to have the ban until we can. But I think that I mean at least that's where I'm at. I don't know where you guys are. So
council member is 75 and then 175.
And 175. I think it's way too low for something so dangerous for golf carts.
Let's continue here.
Well, try as I might, I can't think of an alternative. I really can't. I would only add my dismay about the legislature and the general zeitgeist of living with preemption on things that really compromise our ability to follow our own mission statement and do the best for our community. And so I think that a sustained effort to try to change that pervasively is also on my template, but I don't see an alternative.
Okay.
Ted? I would permanently ban the Type 3 motorized bike because it's 28 miles an hour. Our speed limit's 20 on Key Biscayne, so it's ridiculous to have a bike, motorized bike. I would permanently ban Type 2, which is what Lucio was talking about, electric motorcycle, because you don't have to bike that. That's just a throttle. And I would permit Type 1 bikes, which are motor assisted. I think they're talking 15 miles an hour. And I would set the age to go to junior high school so kids could drive them to Mast.
But we can't do that.
No, then I would permit them altogether. But again, it's a pedal assisted bike. It's not a motorcycle, but it's not the high speed one.
No, they are different, that's for sure.
Sorry?
They are different.
And you bike your regular bike at 12 miles an hour anyway, just casually. So you're really not getting a big advantage. And you're not talking about going up hills here.
I suppose just last thing on, the county, the ability to proscribe Crandon depends on that interlocal agreement.
No, I'm assuming that's going to happen.
But the good thing is that it's difficult for you to get to Crandon. So that gives us a measure of protection for right now. Oscar?
I think the discussion's a bit premature in the sense that the ban is going to continue until such time that we have possibility of regulating. I think the age limit is definitely something we need to look at. I like the idea of banning this class 3s just because of their speed and the speed limits, although Crandon Park is a speed limit of 30, or Crandon Boulevard is a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. So what are we, if that's the example, then can we really ban them based on that?
Our streets are 20.
No, I know. But Crandon is 30.
But that's not our street right now.
Right, but again, that's why I say that the discussion's a bit premature. We really don't know yet. As far as continuing the ban, I think we're all unanimously looking at continuing the ban another 60 days at the minimum to try to see if we can get more opportunity to regulate.
No, I mean, I'm not for what you just said. Like, yes, extend it, but only extend it so that we can put our ordinance together. That's not another 60 days. I'm not in favor of going to a third 60 days. I'm only a second 60 days. And one other thing I just want to bring up that I know some of the presidents in the condos, they also banned in some of these condo buildings, and they've been a huge success, and people super happy over there as well. So it's not just us; it's going into the buildings now because they've been dealing with a lot of issues as well.
One thing, just so I hear the discussion, we can bring an ordinance on first reading and have a broad title, so we can to pick up time. In other words, so we could come with a broad title, and then if through the debate, as Councilmember London maybe wants to not prohibit all classes of vehicles, that would be within the title, and that could occur during first and second reading if we wanted to do that. So
I think that's the way to go. So bring us something back that we can achieve what everybody wants, and then we'll decide which way we end up going. But definitely, this thing isn't going to be resolved in May, let's say. So we need to begin planning for a permanent ordinance that takes care of the needs of our community.
And Mayor, I think it's important also I've heard people say this is a knee-jerk reaction to an incident that happened, which is very far from the truth.
Right.
This came to us more than a year ago, and I wasn't in favor, but obviously the majority of council is to try to find ways to regulate it within what we could do, and it didn't work. I mean, it was very obvious it didn't work. We did the education, we did the enforcement. It was really difficult. So, we've been dealing with this for over 2 years now, and it's not just like, oh, we're just coming up with this idea of knee-jerk reaction to an incident. That's not true.
But 90% probably of the complaints, of the problems, were the Type 2, the fat tire electric motorcycle. not the type 1 or the type 3 for that matter.
Yeah.
Pedal assisted. Because loads of adults have pedal assisted, Claire and I do. You go up there and you can't go over the bridge. It's really nice to have a little bit of assistance going over the bridge.
The only
Excuse
problem.
me. So I think you're talking about the complaints. You're really primarily talking about the class 2. And that is the non-assisted electric
Pressing the
motorcycle.
button.
That may be the case, but the problem with that, the packs of kids riding the Type 1 were so
When did
densely
you ever see a kid
populated.
ride a Type 1? Before they started with the Type 2?
No,
They
no,
were- they were-
I'm observing a nuisance and a perceived dangerous condition in a larger lens, not just the fat tires, because the density of kids riding around on all of these vehicles is a problem.
But you're assuming you saw people riding the Type 1.
I think I can recognize it.
I don't think necessarily you could.
Yeah,
Maybe I can.
but that brings up a point of enforcement, and we have to be careful of, hey, we're going to do one but not the other, and then you're going to have police going, I'm going to go nuts now because who's who, what's what,
It's
and
really easy to throttle a flat tire.
I know, but they keep changing.
Okay, so I think you've got good direction. Let's go on to
What's their direction? I was
last thought. Okay.
What about the idea of, with exception possibly for the gated multifamily, the secured multifamily, the entire village is a park.
What?
A park. People recreate throughout the entire village. The allowance to regulate in parks are broader. The entire village is a park. Think about it.
Okay. Ready?
So the directions they bring back in.
Can I have more clarification, Mr. Mayor, on exactly what the direction is?
Okay.
We can read that into.
I think that we're going to have an emergency ordinance on in April to extend.
Okay.
For
To give it time to put in our permanent ordinance.
Right, and then we're also going to have an ordinance on first reading, which will be broad enough to accomplish, a complete prohibition. And then, during the first and second reading process, the council will decide what they want to do.
And we'll be able to see where the county is moving as well.
Yeah, we'll come the second reading once the county, gets forward. Because, look, we'll see what happens, right? The county's starting their process March 19th. They don't have any discussion on first reading. Then we don't know if it's going to get waived out of committee or not. Then there'll be a public hearing at committee if it goes to committee. And then depending on if they have the 4-week notice or 6-week notice for the municipal notification. There's a lot of factors that we're still working through with Commissioner Regalado in her office. So the timing, is a little up in the air, and we don't know how the other county commissioners are going to react to this ordinance either yet. So.
But why does that affect us other than just what we can do on Crandon? We can still pass ours, right?
Yeah, it has. Yes, the only thing it does is that you're trying to have a comprehensive solution to address this, right? But you have a gaping hole on Crandon until the county can help. So, but you're right. You can move forward without them. To be clear.
Okay. But I also want you to take a look at what's in that ordinance, because if you look at it, it actually puts a speed limit of 15 miles an hour on these bikes, which can go 20, which is going to make it very difficult for our police to enforce it. So please look at the ordinance in detail and provide us feedback. I intend to attend the March 19th meeting. I don't think it'll be discussed. Most ordinances now are discussed during committee. So we'll follow up in April to do that if we have some details from the council.
You sent it us digitally as well?
I've sent you that is the latest as of today. I can send you that one today.
Okay.
And I also want to be clear that I don't think Steve and I, we have both reviewed this ordinance and we've commented on it at the county level. I think we still have additional comments that we're going to be giving them also.
Yeah, we literally got this at 2:30 today.
Yeah, we got this version like literally right before the meeting.
Okay. Mr. Manager, I'll take up the next item that's important that we talk about.
You want to jump to
Community initiatives follow-up. What are we doing so that everybody knows?
Okay, so, Mr. Mayor, Council, so as you recall, on February 26th, we had a meeting with the community where we talk about what we can do to protect our children. Out of that meeting, we identified a number of things that the community was asking for, some of the things that are best practices as well. So soon afterwards, we released a Village Connect to the community that identified 9 different approaches that we were going to do. And I can go through them one at a time, and if you have any feedback, I can give you kind of a quick overview if you have any recommendations on what you want to do to move forward. First one is a neighborhood watch program. We have not started that yet. However, we have the first meeting with our community on Thursday night. So I can give you more feedback after that evening on how that goes forward. The second one is putting together community awareness workshops and seminars. We are going to continue doing what we've done in the past with our police village resource officers. We're going to put a little more effort into it, focusing more specifically on child safety. We have a couple programs coming up, one in particular in April. And at those programs, we're actually going to bring in the state attorney's office, one of the ladies who was there that evening, to come back to the community and talk about child safety as well. We have actually received a proposal where a company can bring a greater comprehensive bit of child safety and orientation that they can provide in the community as well as in the schools. So we're going to be working with the schools. Obviously, some schools are more easy to work with in terms of their curriculum. Public schools are a little more difficult. So we're going to work with them, see what we can bring into those schools. If we can't get it with the school itself, we'll work with the PTAs to provide some sort of education through the PTAs as well. We are looking at our vetting process, and we've gone back and done an extreme detailed assessment of our vetting process, and what we've come up with is that our vetting process is sound. However, there are some things that we do need to look at. This is an opportunity, as I've said before, to look and figure out how we can do things even better than we've been doing them in the past. So we're looking at this as an opportunity. We are going to bring on additional capability for the Parks Director to look in more in depth of our employees, our contractors, our permittees, those who work out on Village Green, also inside of our community center, and then also our volunteers. One of the things that we found that we need to do a little bit better is to vet our volunteers, and even more so, increase the definition of what is a volunteer. Not just the individual who is signed up specifically to do that, working for one of our sports or one of our programs, but also some of the assistants who come out and help them as well. So we're going to do that, and we're going to be bringing in a fingerprint machine, which will actually allow us to do a direct background check out of the community center. So that's a good success, and we're moving forward, and that's already ordered, and it should be in over the next couple weeks.
And that, excuse me, that would allow us to do a level 2 background check?
That would allow us to do level 2 background check, correct. As we've been reporting over the last year in terms of security cameras and LPRs, we've been adding additional security cameras and LPRs throughout the village, on the Village Green, in Beach Park. Next step in terms of cameras, we'll be putting it onto our beach access pathways. We currently have 4 LPRs in the village. We're going to bring that number up to 6. So we have much stronger capability of surveillance on the village. Just to give a shout out to the LPRs, and I think one of our residents today mentioned when his vehicle was stolen, we have a 95% or even greater, Chief will probably get me if I didn't, it's 95, 98, but 95% recovery rate for vehicles stolen in the village, and that really is attributed to our LPRs. And so that more people should realize that when people come into this village, we know when people come into this village. And so kudos to Chief and his job that he does. Law enforcement integration and talking about how we do operations. Chief is looking at the idea of maybe forming a citizen police forum. We're going to work through that. It might be an opportunity for our police officers to engage perhaps with the youth or engage with other community programs where they can talk about what they do operationally, so they can better understand each one of their dynamics, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's investigations, whether it's marine operations, so we can give our residents an opportunity to really understand what our police are doing. We have and will continue to do this. Our eighth item we talked about is to ensure that we reiterate to our residents to how to report any incident they see. It's not on social media. It's not with your friend. It's called 911 if it's emergency. It's not an emergency, but it's a concern that you actually call the police number other than emergency, which is 305-365-5555. Everybody should know that number by heart. And if they see anything that they're concerned about, it's an emergency, 911. If it's not, make sure you call the other number. And the last one that we're working out is just reiterating where is the proper location to get official information. And we're doing that through whether it's Village Connect, whether it's our website, whether it's something that we post in the newspapers. We'll make sure that it's very clear to our community that it is coming directly from the village and it is village information.
Questions to the manager on this?
I'm just curious about 311. Is it well and widely used? Is it a useful tool?
311?
See it, say it. Did I get it wrong?
Yeah, 311 up.
Are you talking about the VKB?
Yeah, I'm talking about.
Oh, the VKB 311.
Yeah.
311.
Well, that's 3KB 311, yes. That is just to report a
Service.
maintenance service request. It is not intended for any emergency. We purposely did not put anything fire or police related on VKB 311.
Yes.
Emergency I got, but I was under the impression from an earlier conversation that people were using it to report nuisances and the like.
Yeah, but the preference for public safety is to go through the non-emergency number.
Yes.
Just because the sheer volume that we get, it's a lot easier to go through the non-emergency number. That way we can deal with it immediately and we have ways of tracking it. The app is being used for more of the other daily village
We do have a disclaimer on the app that says that. Maybe we need to identify that more clearly, that it is not intended for any police or fire operations. Those are to be reported directly.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. You covered everything.
I hit them all, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, there's more detail, but we're well moving forward. The staff is engaged. Police continue to work hard as they've been doing. Our Parks Director is looking into how we do operations, and the rest of the staff is ensuring that we're supporting them, providing community programming, and making sure that we're communicating every step of the way.
And one of the people that was there, this woman, Mara Dougie,
yes,
provided you with some further information of how to make this a safer preventative mode. And you're looking at all those things to come back and make a better program.
Yes, we have. In fact, we've met with her twice, and she's even more of a wealth of information and knowledge, and not just wealth of knowledge, the ability to actually bring programming to the community than we even expected. So that is actually, she's been working with a conglomerate of different groups and putting together a proposal of what they can do to support the community.
Great. Let's jump down to 11B7, and Mr. London, who just wants to spend money here, but let's listen. Let's listen to him.
Who is this man?
Is Jeremy still here or not? Jeremy leave?
He's here. He's upstairs.
Okay.
We jumped quickly to it. He wasn't ready at this point. So
anyway,
Jeremy, come down.
Jeremy came with $197,000. I think was it 197? 197 instead of the 175 to get all the materials, the seats, the screen, the projector, everything required, the sound system to convert this place.
Right.
You've heard, I don't have to add, you heard Claire and company talk about it. Now it's up to you guys. Do you want to do it or not?
Okay, so, but you have
84 seats we left.
No, wait. You have the ability to bring before the council a very specific project, and you can
Yes.
work with staff, and
We did.
and then you bring a reso, and
We did that.
no.
So what we did was
Yeah.
go ahead and work with staff.
Right.
And you wanted a committee. So
Right,
we had
right.
a
But what
committee.
I'm saying is that
So if everybody agrees, then they'll put it formally.
But
whatever you have to do to make it work.
I don't think we need to do that. I mean, if it's your initiative, you can bring it before council, and
That's what that was what doing tonight.
What we can do, Mr. Mayor, there's two options. Well, I guess there's three. If we want to do it, we'll go forward, and then there's two options on how we fund this. Right now, it's not in the budget, so we would either bring it forward in mid-year reprogramming, which we intend to do in April, or we would fund it in next year's budget.
But I checked, and we have a $6 million surplus in this year's budget right now.
Right, that's what we're bringing that forward for reprogramming
In April.
In April. So,
But
right now,
my point is, bring something.
Yeah, bring it forward.
That is.
Well,
But this you need more meat and bones.
Well, we
to
have
the
the
thing,
Jeremy has the whole list of things.
No.
No, but he wants to see like the drawing or something. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, a resolution that
The
says
resolution.
we're gonna do all this, boom, 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 and here's what it looks like. Just
You wanted a little
There's some
diagram.
visuals.
yeah.
Okay.
But you can do that. You can work with staff.
I have no
and-
problem doing it. Just
Yeah.
if you're all in favor of
Well, I
doing
thought
this-
we already did that. This
Totally.
is where I'm like,
Yes.
well, why
100%.
why is it back here?
Fine.
You're okay with the price?
Sorry?
You're okay with the price, right?
I haven't shopped it.
All right.
Oh, okay.
I said not to exceed, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
I think you have a lot of support here.
think
So
you have
why don't you go
consensus.
ahead and put it together and bring it back with the plan, and we look at it.
Support it?
Yeah.
Yes.
well,
Everybody support it?
Yes.
Yeah, you got
Bring
consensus.
a
We
reso
just- Missy Allison and,
specs.
Fernando.
You got consensus of.
I think what we need to do, Mr. Mayor, is I think we need to bring it forward in terms of a funding requirement in April. You all can vote on
Great.
whether you want to fund it.
Let's do that.
Because I think we're getting the cart before, or the horse, whatever it is, the cart before the horse. In terms of having him come, normally we don't come forward with a design and approve it. What we do is we approve the funding, and then we bring it back to the council.
That's what we're doing tonight.
I don't see it that way. I think you bring a project forward because we all want to see it, and then you find a way to fund it, right?
We can do it that way as well.
Will it cost us any money to put together the drawings, or Jeremy, you already kind of have something like that, or what? We don't have to have anything super formal, just a sketch or whatever.
No, Jeremy Koskogger, BZP director. We don't have drawings. We have an estimate based on materials, and a multiplier for installation, estimated installation. Did not a huge deep dive on all of that, but enough to get what seems like realistic numbers on the materials. And it's probably a design build project because it really is specifying installation. The only real variable that needs careful thought is seating, but we're using movable seats, and the exit requirements for fire that would need to be designed.
We've done that today.
Yeah, and did some thought for layout, and that might need to be in a drawing at some point to get a permit to proceed.
So maybe
I met with Marcos, the fire marshal, and Eric, and we went through the size here, the size of things, aisle size, everything else today. So we could get 84 seats without problem.
Can one of our staff just do like a quick hand sketch of this is what it would look like? Or
I think
it
we
doesn't have to be
need it
anything
for
detailed, just a
we
plan.
need it for permitting.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Anyway,
We need it anyway,
so-
yeah.
And that wouldn't cost us a lot of. That wouldn't cost us anything, or
Why don't we
just
do
time?
this, Jeremy? Why don't let's put it out and get some proposals for cost. I mean, we're estimating ourselves. Why don't we see if someone can, so that way we can have a firmer number when we come back in April.
Yeah, I think
as
we
you
probably
would for
could.
anybody else.
Yeah.
Just talk to an installer.
Just to make sure that, I know you're.
Yeah.
It's
No, this was-
175 here, but we said 197 today.
Yeah.
Steve, half the cost is the chairs, we just buy them. The other
Yeah.
stuff, basically, the only major installation is the audiovisual.
Yeah, we have,
No, I understand.
70,
I just want to
75
make sure that
annual.
we've got the right number.
75K annual
Make sure we have the right number.
for annually recurring, and then 200K for capital.
So what you're saying is operation and maintenance.
Operation and
how much?
maintenance
75
ongoing,
a year?
75,000 a year.
Okay, so we'd have to put that in the budget as
yeah.
well. Okay.
And the chairs will replace these chairs during council meetings, so they'll have the same chairs for watching movies on as sitting in council meetings. And
Yeah, they'll be so comfortable. This is
Put people to
really
sleep?
uncomfortable.
I know, but they're done like that
Maybe
on
we should
purpose
keep
because
them
we're
that
so
way, like
boring.
yours.
You got to keep people awake. They're gonna all fall asleep in the.
Comfy chairs.
Todd wants to take these over to the, when they're not used, over to the community center. Biggest complaint he has is about the seats over there.
Well, let's get some quotes, Jeremy, and then that'll give us a better understanding of what we need to do, and then we'll bring it forward with the cost in April, and with it, we'll also bring a sketch on what it'll look like.
Okay. Next item, we couldn't arrange it for Mr. Alfonso to tag up with us.
Unfortunately, he was in Puerto Rico at a meeting. Eddie Alfonso was positioned with the Mashta Island Association, and you saw pictures. I think everybody got 3 pictures of the Mashta Island Bridge. One of them is very simple. It's basically cutting the hedges down so you have a view. Now the hedges are blocking your view, which is nothing. I think Jocelyn has one picture attached here in the back, and you can see paving where people walk, and basically fill it in with pavers. And that's it. It's that simple. So that's what they're requesting.
Mr. Manager, have you looked at this?
We have. If you want to come forward, Carol. And I'll have to ask him to see if we have the funding in the budget currently. As you do know, that we're very close to this, the Water and Sewer Department is about to put in a pump station. So depending on what their construction space is, I would suggest we wait until that's done. But I'll let the Public Works Director go into detail a little bit more.
Good evening. Yes, we looked into it, and we would be able to do something after the pump station is finished construction. We would ask them not to replant because they would have to restore what they tore up, and we would have to get a quote for the pavers. It would be more than the 5,000 that was quoted in the email, but it won't be much more.
So, in other words, once the pump station's in, you'll take care of the paving. Is that what I understand?
It would have to be something that, you guys would have to agree to doing.
What?
No. I mean, I could probably do it within my own authority.
do it?
But the
Okay.
first thing we got to ask is, number one, do we have we got a budget this year? We got to ask that question. Secondly, if not, which likely this project will be done next year, which we just put in the budget,
Absolutely, yeah.
the next year's budget.
Sure.
We would have to discuss that.
I mean, not talking about a lot of money.
Yeah.
You can see not that much paving. It does look like shit.
Yeah, it doesn't look that good. So what I suggest we do, Mr. Mayor, is that water and sewer is not known for fast construction. We'll take a look at what we can do now in terms of landscaping. In other words, not the groundscaping. Right? And what we'll do is this likely will not be done, the county project, until next year. So what we'll do is put this in the budget for
Is
next
this
fiscal
where the county project's gonna be, this area?
It's in the vicinity of that. Cairo can say specifically where it is.
But I mean, is it specifically in the area we're looking at, Kyle?
Yes, it is. Well, they're impacting that area due to construction. That area that you're looking at is in the work zone.
What's that mean?
They're not actively working there, but they're going to be messing it up because they have to bring in equipment and they're going to be damaging it. So it is within the work zone.
They could be damaging. Yeah, they'll be using that for vehicles and
I understand.
that sort of thing. So we don't want to do something while they're doing that construction. So we'll take a look at anything from a foliage, and we can take a look at what we can do right now. And then what we'll do is we'll do an estimate on what we want to do. We'll be happy to go out and talk to the Mashta Homeowners Association, get some recommendations from them.
Great.
We'll get our guys to take a look at it, and we'll put it in the budget for next year.
Great, thank you. That was it.
Okay. I got some items. First item, pension board appointments. I would be recommending that we reappoint Bill Stevens and Adolfo Enriquez to the pension board.
Move. Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
On
Motion carries.
the Education Advisory Board, making 2 appointments tonight. One is Oneida Mendia, and the second one is Laura Teran Zapata.
Moved. Second.
And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and I might have another one in the EAB, but we'll bring that back if necessary. But that would be 3 new appointments,
In the last 2 sessions.
yeah, so that hopefully you should be able to meet and get going again. Number 5 under mayor and council, Mr. Manager, can you tell us, because I thought that we had talked about this at some point in time, you were going to do a master plan of what lighting we need in our neighborhoods. Can you tell us what's going on?
I've had the public works director working on that, and he can give you an update of where we are now and the steps we got to go to move forward.
Okay. And obviously, this is a safety situation that we need to address. And I know over the years there's been conversations, and I think at the beginning people didn't want lights, but we need to study it, and we need to say where we actually really need it and go with
I
it.
proposed this previously, and I was told the reason we're not doing it because we're waiting for the undergrounding. And then I proposed that we're gonna have underground, fine, and we're supposed to be going to alternate forms. So I proposed having the electric poles with a solar battery. And obviously, one was no good, neither was the other. We're gonna wait. So the question is, are we gonna go forward? Or are we just gonna talk about it? Because it's sort of frustrating when you bring these things up and they go nowhere.
Right. Okay. I'm glad you worked on this before too. But obviously, based on everything that's happening, we need to go forward with finding out where do we have our biggest problems, and then starting to address those by order of priority. Can you tell us anything else?
Yeah, so at the moment, we have a consultant that is doing an analysis village-wide of what we currently have, the connections, the system, if, whether they're FPL, whether we maintain them, just to get the basis. And then from there, we're gonna analyze that report and go forward with most likely a master plan that will give options as to what we want to do in the future. If we want to do the maintenance ourselves, if we want to do it through FPL, if we want, what is the criteria that we want for the lighting as far as foot candles, etc.
But the first step we're going to do is a coverage assessment, making sure that we have the entire village covered in the way we want to do it.
Yep.
So first one is to do that. And what he did mention, you heard him say that, is we have 3 different owners of streetlights in our village. It's either us, it's either FPL, or it's the county. So we've got to make sure, ideally we'd like to have them owned by one. We may have the problem with that on Crandon Boulevard, but we're going to look at that, who is the best person, whether it's FPL, whether it's us, to maintain those in the future.
You bring up an interesting point. The independent lighting district, we still have those on in the village.
Yeah, we do.
Yes, they're FPL.
We do.
Yeah, the FPL ones.
How many do we have?
I don't know that number. I would have to look into that.
Offhand, I think there's 75 lights in 2 different neighborhoods, and they pay into their own. It's their own assessment. They pay on their own. But that's all part of what we're going to capture. We have a good amount of that information, but we have to bring it forward to really understand.
And synthesize.
Got one on my street.
Yep, and those are actually done for the. Those are actually done for the
there's
county.
one on not by my house because I don't get any service, but
I'd like to keep you in the dark, man.
Off of Heather, there is a lighting district.
Why do we have to hire a consultant to determine how many poles we need?
They're putting together a report so that we understand.
Don't we have an
what
engineer on our staff, your staff?
Yes, but he's not a lighting engineer.
What?
He's not a lighting engineer.
So he can't count?
He can count, but he
Wait,
doesn't know about
poles?
circuitry. He doesn't know about other components that are electrical. I managed a contract for the DOT that was electrically related. I didn't sign and seal anything, nor had any input in it. I only managed the contract, which is what I'm doing now with this one. Managing.
Look, we may be able to do it with FPL. If we do decide we want to turn this over to FPL, and that's one of those options that we'll consider, FPL will actually do the lighting coverage assessment themselves. It sounds simple, but it's not as simple as it.
We put them in certain streets without anybody, right?
Excuse me?
Did we put them down certain streets? Like down Mashta, you put down lights already?
Mm-hmm. Master has them.
Yeah, they have lights, yes.
Did they work out okay?
Yeah.
What do you mean? I'm not, yeah.
I mean, they're fine.
The lights work, yes.
No, I mean,
Yeah, well, one of the issues with that is that FPL, they put lights at a certain spacing. They don't do it based on photometric analysis. And that's where someone that knows what they're doing does that analysis and study. I know because I did over 30 intersections in the county. I know what I'm talking about.
So
We
you
need
can-
someone
you
to
know
do
how to
that
do it
kind of
yourself,
photometric. I managed it.
you don't know how to do it.
I managed an engineer that would do the photometrics. FPL, their criteria is very simple. They go in and they say, we're going to do it every 50, 100 feet. And that's it. They don't do any lighting analysis whatsoever. That's not in their purview.
Mr. Mayor, let us bring back a recommendation on the way to move forward.
Yes, let's do it. I think we've covered everything.
I would like to end the meeting, if you don't have any more, on the good news about our appropriations and where they stand.
Okay, before you do that, just give us a brief overview of what this, thank you, Neighborhood Watch, so that people understand what we're trying to accomplish.
So as I mentioned before, we want to put together a neighborhood watch. This is a number of folks who actually came forward during the meeting on February 26th, who want to make sure that we are a little more vigilant in what we're doing. And I know a couple of people mentioned earlier that this is an opportunity to spy on people. This is not intended to do this. There are many communities that have neighborhood watches. This is not anything that isn't done in other communities. But one of the things we want to do is make sure that it is community run, because we want to make sure that we have community buy-in, community ideas on how they want to move forward. So what we're going to ask them to do is, first of all, identify what are the biggest concerns, right? This can't be everything. And I don't want it to be everything. I don't think they want it to be everything. So we have to narrow it in as what are the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things that we believe are the issues we want to address. And then we're going to specifically narrow in on what are the goals of the task force or the group that we're going to put together. And then after that, we're going to put together a charter that really bases on what are their goals, how they're going to organize, and then how they're going to collaborate with the police and the administration. So that's what we'll do on Thursday night. I'll report back on how that goes and how that structure is put in place, and then we'll put them moving forward based on the goals we put in place.
But basically, you stand up this thing, and then the village has no control over it, or nothing else to do with it except for the collaboration that
just collaboration. Obviously, it's a group of we want it to be a volunteer organization, one that's focused on trying to provide greater safety to the community. We actually want to make sure they stay focused. So we will, and based on what they want to do is how often they want to come back to us to collaborate. But the intent is for these residents to lead this group going forward.
Right.
But obviously with the necessary support and collaboration with the village.
Right, but we're not putting people in there. It's up to the community to buy into this. They don't buy into it, we don't have to do this either. So it's
yes, and in fact, one of the things that I want to make sure we do on Thursday night is actually put a structure in place. Someone's got to stand up and say, I'm going to lead this organization. Someone's got to stand up as this is the way we want to structure this to move forward to be a successful organization.
How do we assure this doesn't go awry and become something that we don't want it to be? How do you control that? I don't understand.
It becomes a lawless organization itself, potentially.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I just don't. Like, they go beyond what we thought they were supposed to be doing, or it gets caught up into craziness, and then you're just like, oh my God, what did we start?
I mean, there's just a suggestion that occurs to me to mention. To sanction this and ordain its outcome before completing an assessment of what's needed and what it would do and how it would be organized I think sends a worrisome message. And we heard that tonight. So I would maybe try to package substance and then articulate solution and not reverse.
And see if it's even needed. We may not, there might be some other option, but yeah, maybe.
I think that's good counsel. Obviously we intend to start this with identifying what is the problem, right? Let's not throw a solution that's something that we believe is the problem. Let's identify what we believe is the problem. Yeah. Let's identify what we see that the gap we want to fill. And that's exactly how we're going to start the meeting. And then maybe perhaps we'll just end it with what are the goals. And then maybe the next time we come around, we talk about organization. But let's see how this flows. See how many people come. I know we've had a number of people who've signed up, said they're going to attend. Let's hope they do in fact attend, and I'll be able to give you a report back after our first meeting.
Yeah, I think it would be important for this organization to deal with, let's say, more education. We heard at that one meeting that people took 24 hours to call something in. I mean, we got to do a much better job of educating people that they have a responsibility at all times to call in whatever emergency or non-emergency issue is, and let our police department handle that. So I think that those are the kind of things, if we get some of that out of something like that. That could be useful.
Yeah, I would imagine, as we heard, one of our biggest things, and we heard that on the 26th, is who to report to and how to report. Mm-hmm. And so that may be one of the issues we need to address.
Good. Okay. All right, your last thing?
Yes, so let's leave on some good news here. And when you have a big spreadsheet in front of you, hopefully you guys can read it. So we've had some good news. In fact, it was... I won't say it was because of the mayor, but at the same time, the mayor and I were up in D.C. Soon after we left. Our representative went down on the floor, and we got approved for $600,000 for the Coastal Storm Risk Management Study for fiscal year 24 this year. They're a little bit behind on approving budgets. The second one, at the same time, we put in a request to Congresswoman Salazar for next year for three things. One was for $5 million for the K-8 stormwater project, and then the second one was for $400,000 for the coastal storm risk management study. But we just had the president's budget came out 2 days ago, and they submitted as $500,000. So we're now up $700,000 in the last 2 weeks. That's because Councilmember Sardinias came with us. So, and then lastly, we're still talking to the Corps as to whether we want to move forward with a separate study for an offshore barrier reef with NOAA. They've committed to me that they would put it into their study. I've got to get confirmation with that. So we have the option of submitting a request into the federal budget for FY25 for $750,000 for an offshore barrier reef study with NOAA. And while we were up in D.C. last week, the mayor and myself, Councilmember Sardinias, had a great opportunity to meet with NOAA. They're very excited about the project, and when Rowan comes back after his Caribbean foray for the last 2 weeks, we'll get him back with NOAA and get more detail on that. But more to follow on that as to whether we go with the Corps or whether we go with NOAA. But the really good news, as you've heard over the last couple of weeks, and I want you just to hold on to a little bit until the governor actually signs off on this. Remember, he does have veto approval over these, but if you can see looking across on the spreadsheet, we requested for $1 million for the K-8 project. We got approved at this point through the legislature for $500,000. The traffic data analysis project that is going to analyze traffic from the mainland to Bill Baggs Park, we got approved for $137,500. For multimodal traffic flow and safety improvements on Crandon Boulevard, we got approved for $212,500. Unfortunately, this year our senior programming did not get approved. But good news on our special needs program, it did get approved at $100,000. As did our emergency management planning and training and exercise for $250,000. The $450,000 we had submitted for sargassum removal and disposal, that was really intended to be part of a grant program that Florida Department of Emergency Management had last year. They decided not to continue that grant program, so that was taken off pretty close to the beginning of the legislature. And then lastly, from an administrative perspective, we are working with the Department of Environmental Protection, the Parks Division, for a interlocal agreement with Bill Baggs State Parks, where they will fund us for any traffic control support that we provide to the beach. Oh, excuse me, to the park.
It's fair to say that on the sargassum, we did enlist NOAA's help in potentially giving us some resources on studies that they're performing on.
Yes.
Alternative options we might have for the
sargassum. That'll broaden, and one of the things that we're concerned of, and I think we've talked about it before, is our inability to touch sargassum until it hits the beach. as a protected species. We brought forth the idea that maybe a protected species which is dominating the environment is no longer a protected species. They actually agree with that. Obviously, there's a lot of regulation and red tape they'd have to get through to change that regulation, but they're beginning to look at that as seeing this is actually an invasive species above and beyond, just a normal, as we obviously see it on our beach. The last thing I also want to highlight, if you look below, and I think we've mentioned it before, but Public Works Director has begun working with the Department of Transportation and Public Works, the county. They gave us authorization for $2.68 million for the renovation and the improvement of Harbor Drive. We're working with plans. I guess he's out right now. Plans and beginning to start the initial design to determine exactly the cost of going all the way from Crandon Boulevard to the end of Harbor Drive. Repave it, improve safety, as well as our traffic circles. So far, a good year. We've had a lot of progress.
Great work.
Well done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order? Seeing none, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moving second, all those in favor say aye. Aye.